Hey everyone, and welcome to Nighttime Stories. I'm here to help you drift off into a peaceful sleep. Let me know where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories reach. Now, get comfortable and relax. I used to think of myself as a heavy sleeper. My apartment is small, quiet, and on the second floor of an older building where the walls are thick enough that you barely hear neighbors. Nights here have always been uneventful. Nothing but the occasional hum of pipes or the low whir of the fridge. That changed a few weeks ago. The first time it happened, I woke suddenly, heart pounding like I had been startled from a nightmare. But I could not remember dreaming anything at all. I lay still, listening. My eyes adjusted to the dark and drifted toward the doorway of my bedroom, which faces the hallway. That is when I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, beyond the kitchen, there was a shape, tall, too tall, its head brushed against the ceiling. The body was darker than the dark around it, like a shadow piled on top of shadow. No features I could make out, no movement, just standing there. I blinked hard, telling myself it was just the lingering fog of sleep or maybe my eyes playing tricks on me. But the longer I stared, the clearer it became. It had shoulders, arms, legs. It was a figure, a person, and yet it did not look like any person I had ever seen. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at me to turn on the light. Slowly, I reached for the lamp on the nightstand and flicked it on. Warm yellow glow spilled across the room, into the hall. Empty. The hallway was completely empty. I sat there, breathing fast, trying to convince myself that it had been nothing more than a dream half remembered. I even got out of bed and checked the locks on the front door. Everything was secure. The hallway was bare, just as it had always been. I eventually crawled back under the blankets and told myself to sleep. But once you see something like that, you do not just forget it. The next night, I tried to shake the unease off. I went to bed later than usual, scrolling on my phone until my eyes grew heavy. I told myself that the strange vision from before was exhaustion or sleep paralysis, even though I had never experienced anything like that before. When I finally drifted off, it felt like I had only been asleep for minutes before my eyes snapped open again. I did not know why I woke up. No noise, no dream, just that same tightness in my chest. I turned my head toward the hallway. It was there again. Same place, at the far end of the hallway. But this time I did not fumble for the lamp right away. I lay there, staring, straining my eyes, hoping I was wrong, hoping it was a trick of shadow and light. But the shape was unmistakable. Too tall, too still, too heavy in the air. Finally, I reached out and snapped the lamp on. Just like before, the figure was gone. The hallway was bare. I sat awake until dawn, lights on, unable to close my eyes. My rational brain tried to offer explanations. My eyes were tired. My brain was conjuring shapes in the dark. Maybe a coat rack I had forgotten about, or some trick of light reflecting from the street outside. But the building faces a narrow alley, and I keep heavy curtains over the windows. There is no light from outside that could possibly make that shape. Still, I tried to dismiss it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that if I ignored it, it would stop. But it did not stop. The third night, I barely slept at all. I left the hallway light on, hoping the brightness would chase away whatever it was. Around 3 in the morning, my dog, who normally slept soundly at the foot of my bed, lifted his head and growled low in his throat. His ears went back. Then, all at once, he leapt from the bed and started barking furiously at the hallway. His hackles were raised, his body trembling, tail tucked so tight it almost disappeared. I looked toward the hallway and felt my stomach twist into knots. Even with the light on, it was there. The same tall, dark figure at the far end, standing motionless, watching. I flipped on every light I could, yelling at it, telling myself that whoever or whatever it was, I would scare it away. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, it was gone. Just empty space, and the faint echo of my dog's barks bouncing off the walls. That was when I knew it was not just in my head. I had seen it. My dog had seen it. Something was there. I started keeping the lights on all night after that. It felt stupid, like I was a kid afraid of the dark, but at least the brightness gave me a sense of control. I kept telling myself I was safe, that nothing could hurt me, that this was just a passing hallucination or stress. But deep down, I knew better. Because once something has been in your hallway, once you have seen it stand there, silent and waiting, you cannot shake the feeling that it is only biding its time. That was only the beginning. After that night with my dog barking at the hallway, I knew I could not dismiss it anymore. It was not exhaustion. It was not my imagination. Something was there, and now it was not only me seeing it. My dog had reacted like an animal does when it knows a predator is nearby, and that was somehow worse than anything I could have conjured in my own mind. You can talk yourself out of shadows. You cannot talk a dog out of fear. The next day, I tried to go about life like normal. I made coffee, went to work, answered emails, but everything felt hollow. I kept glancing at corners, at reflective surfaces, at anything where a shadow might form. At one point, while I was standing in line for lunch, I caught myself staring down the hallway of the office building, half expecting to see the same tall figure waiting at the end. It was not there, but the thought alone made me feel sick. When I got home that evening, the apartment felt wrong, too quiet, too expectant. My dog refused to go near the hallway. He kept pacing in circles, panting heavily, looking at me like I should understand what he was feeling. I sat on the couch with all the lights on and tried to calm us both down. Around midnight, I gave in and set up a small camera in the living room. I aimed it directly at the hallway, thinking maybe, just maybe, if I caught something on video, I could prove to myself that this was real. Or maybe I could prove to myself that it was not, which at that point I would have gladly accepted. I left the camera running and went to bed with the door cracked open so the lens had a perfect view down the hall. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke with that same crushing feeling of being watched. I glanced toward the doorway, and of course, it was there again. The figure stood perfectly still at the far end of the hall, its head tilted in a way that made my stomach knot. My mouth went dry. I reached for the lamp, hand shaking, and when the light came on, the hallway was empty, just like before. I forced myself out of bed, went straight to the living room, and grabbed the camera. My hands shook as I scrolled through the playback. Most of the footage was nothing, just still frames of an empty hallway. But then I saw it. Around the same time I had woken up, the figure appeared on the feed. It started at the very far end, so dark it almost blended into the wall. Then, frame by frame, it shifted closer, not in smooth motion. More like it flickered forward, each new position an inch nearer than the last. By the time the video ended, it was halfway down the hallway, standing directly across from the bathroom door, still, waiting. I almost threw the camera against the wall right there. Instead, I shut it off, buried it under a blanket on the couch, and sat shaking for the rest of the night. The next morning, sunlight should have felt like relief. Instead, it only revealed how ragged I had become. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a face I hardly recognized. Pale skin, dark bags under the eyes, a mouth pulled thin from too many hours of silence and fear. My dog looked just as bad, pacing the apartment restlessly, whining at nothing. That night, I could not bring myself to set up the camera again. The thought of watching it move closer was unbearable. But I still left every light in the apartment burning, as though that thin barrier of brightness would keep it at bay. I tried to sleep on the couch, telling myself I would stay awake until morning, but exhaustion dragged me under anyway. I woke again in the middle of the night. This time, the hallway lights flickered. Not off completely, just dimming and brightening, like someone was playing with the switch. And at the very edge of the light, right where the glow began to fade into shadow, I saw it. It was closer, not at the far end anymore, A few steps forward, nearer to the kitchen. I could see the outline of its shoulders, long and sloped, the arms hanging too low, the head bent slightly as if it were ducking under the ceiling. I froze, barely breathing, afraid that any movement would draw it nearer. My dog whimpered and pressed himself against my side, his body trembling so hard I could feel the vibration through the cushions. I stayed like that until the light steadied again. When it did, the figure was gone. The following day, I could not stop replaying it in my mind. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw it standing there, closer than before. My apartment no longer felt like mine. It was as though the hallway had become a stage, and I was only an audience member forced to watch whatever came next. On the fourth night, I left the camera running again. I told myself I had to know, even if the truth made me sick. Sleep did not come easily, and when it did, it was shallow and restless. I woke up again around the same time, heart hammering, skin damp with sweat. The hallway looked empty at first, but I could feel it. That pressure in the air, that sense of something watching. My stomach rolled with dread. I stayed in bed until morning, unable to face the hallway, unable to check the footage until the sun came up. When I finally forced myself to look, the video showed exactly what I feared. The figure had moved again, closer, step by step, night by night. It was walking toward me. By the end of the recording, it stood only a few feet from my bedroom door. I do not think I realized how much of myself I was losing until that fifth night. By then, my entire existence revolved around waiting for it to appear. I barely ate. I hardly showered. My dog had stopped sleeping altogether, pacing from one room to another with his ears flat, whining low in his throat as if warning me even when nothing was visible. Every creak of the building, every gust of air through the vents, made both of us jump. The apartment no longer felt like home. It felt like a trap. That night, I left the camera running again, though my hands shook so badly it took me several tries to set it up. I kept thinking about the last frame I had seen, where the figure stood only a few feet from my bedroom door. It had been advancing steadily, night after night. If the pattern held, it would be right outside my door this time. I do not know why I tortured myself by watching the footage the next morning. Maybe some part of me thought I could prepare for what was coming, even if that preparation meant nothing. When I hit play, the hallway appeared empty at first. The seconds ticked by, then the faint flicker of static, and there it was, the tall, dark shape, closer than before. Frame by frame, it inched forward. It no longer stayed at the far end of the hallway like it had at the beginning. It was walking, deliberate and slow, each new flicker showing it farther along. By the end of the recording, it was standing directly in front of my bedroom door. I slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought I had broken it. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow and ragged. I could not sit still. I paced the living room while my dog barked at the closed door of the bedroom, his nails scratching the wood like he was trying to dig his way through. I yelled at him to stop, but the truth was, I wanted to scratch the door down myself just to prove there was nothing behind it. Except I knew better. Later that night, I made the mistake of trying to sleep in the bedroom anyway. I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe the footage was glitched. Maybe there was something wrong with the camera lens. I curled up in bed with the lamp on and the dog at my side, though neither of us found much rest. Somewhere after midnight, I woke to my dog barking furiously, louder and sharper than I had ever heard from him. He stood at the bedroom door, fur bristling, teeth bared, his body stiff as he lunged at the wood. His eyes were wild, not looking at me but at something beyond the door, something I could not see. I froze. My mouth was dry. Every muscle in my body wanted to run, but where would I go? Out into the hallway, where I already knew it was waiting. Then came the sound. 3 slow knocks. Not on the front door, on the bedroom door. I could hear the wood trembling under the weight of it, hear the hollow thud echoing in my chest. My dog lost control, scratching and snapping at the air as if the thing were inches away from pushing its way inside. I stumbled out of bed and grabbed the camera from the dresser. My hands were shaking so badly that the screen blurred, but I forced myself to check the live feed. The hallway camera showed it clearly. The tall figure stood pressed against the bedroom door, its shadowed outline looming like it was bending over me. The head tilted slightly, as though it were listening. My stomach lurched when I realized its arms were stretched out, palms flat against the door. I dropped the camera and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the dog as he lunged at the wood again. I could not bring myself to open the door. I could not even bring myself to speak. I just stood there, heart hammering, until the knocking stopped. When I finally dared to look at the camera again, the hallway was empty. That morning, I called a friend who lived across town. I did not tell him everything, just that I needed a place to crash for a while. He agreed without asking questions, probably because he heard the tremor in my voice. I packed a bag quickly, avoiding the hallway, refusing to look at the bedroom door. My dog practically dragged me to the car, whimpering until we were both inside. For a few hours at his place, I felt almost human again. The light coming through the blinds felt normal. The hum of traffic outside was reassuring. I even managed to nap on his couch while my dog finally collapsed into a restless sleep beside me. For the first time in days, I thought maybe I had outrun it. Then I made another mistake. I checked the hallway camera remotely through my phone. The feed was live, and there it was. The figure still stood at my bedroom door, even though I was miles away. It had not moved, not flickered away like before. It was just standing there, waiting, as if it knew I was still watching. My stomach dropped. My throat felt like it was closing. I shut off the feed and shoved the phone under a cushion, as if hiding it would make the image vanish from my memory. But I could still feel it. That night, I woke in my friend's apartment at the same time I always had, heart pounding, skin damp with sweat. My dog stood at the edge of the couch, growling low, staring at the hallway that led to the bedrooms. His body shook the same way it had at home. I did not check. I did not move. I lay there frozen, listening to the growl of my dog, the sound of my pulse in my ears, the emptiness pressing in from the hall. I kept telling myself I was safe, that it was miles away, still standing in my apartment, but deep down, I knew better. I knew it was moving closer, whether I could see it or not. I could not stay at my friend's place more than 2 nights. He did not ask me to leave, but I could feel the weight of my fear starting to bleed into his home. He noticed the way my dog barked at empty corners, the way I jumped at every sound from the hallway. I knew he could not understand. It was not fair to bring this into his space. So I packed my things, forced a smile, thanked him, and went back to my apartment. I do not even remember the drive. My hands were cold on the wheel the whole time, my body heavy with dread. When I finally pulled into the parking lot and looked up at the building, it felt like my chest was caving in. The thought of stepping inside made my skin crawl, but I told myself it was the only way forward. Pretending I could escape was pointless. The apartment was exactly as I had left it. Lights off, curtains drawn, silent, except for the low hum of the fridge. My dog refused to cross the threshold. He planted himself in the doorway and whined, pulling against the leash when I tried to drag him inside. I let him stay in the hall, though the idea of being alone in there made my stomach twist. The first thing I did was check the camera. I told myself I needed to know if it was still there, if it had moved at all while I was gone. The feed loaded, and there it was, clear as ever. The tall figure stood in the hallway, pressed against the bedroom door. It had not moved an inch. The same outline, the same tilt of the head. I stared at it for a long time, wondering if it had been there the entire time I was away, or if it had followed me and come back. Either way, it was waiting, always waiting. I should have destroyed the camera then, but I did not. Instead, I left it running, like I needed to keep punishing myself with proof. That night, I lay on the couch with every light on, clutching a blanket, my dog curled up against me. I kept the feed open on my phone, staring at the motionless shape. hours dragged by. Nothing happened. And then, sometime after midnight, it moved. Not much, just a single shift. One frame it was flush against the door. The next, it had turned its head slightly, as though it were looking directly at the camera. My blood turned cold. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. My dog whimpered in his sleep, ears twitching like he was trapped in a nightmare. I watched as the figure began to step back, slowly, deliberately, frame by frame. It pulled away from the door and stood farther down the hallway. I thought for a second it was leaving, retreating back to where it had come from. My body flooded with relief, so sharp it almost hurt. But then I realized what it was doing. It was walking toward the living room. Toward me. Every few seconds, the feed flickered and it appeared closer. First at the midpoint of the hallway, then a few feet farther. Each time my breath hitched, my skin prickled, my throat closed tighter. My dog woke and started barking frantically, tail jammed between his legs, backing himself into the corner of the couch. He was looking past me, eyes fixed on something I could not see. By the time I forced myself to shut the feed off, the figure was only steps away from the edge of the living room. I sat there shaking, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles ached, too afraid to move, too afraid to breathe. The apartment felt crowded, suffocating, as though something massive was filling the air around me. The hours between then and dawn blurred. I must have dozed off at some point, because I woke to my dog nudging my arm with his nose, whining to be let outside. Sunlight streamed weakly through the blinds. For a few moments, I let myself believe that it was over, that maybe sunlight really did mean safety, like when I was a kid. But when I checked the camera, my stomach dropped. The last frame before the battery died showed the figure standing at the very edge of the living room, inches away from where I had been sleeping on the couch. Its head tilted down, shoulders hunched forward like it was bending over me. I deleted the file immediately. I could not stand the thought of it sitting there on my phone, waiting for me to open it again. But even after it was gone, the image stayed in my mind. That towering shape leaning closer, the implication that I would not have known if it reached for me. The rest of the day was a haze. I did not eat. I did not leave the couch. My dog stayed pressed against me, shaking whenever a floorboard creaked. I tried to convince myself to leave again, but the thought of being alone in another place felt just as unbearable. At least here, I knew where it was, or at least I thought I did. That night, I swore I would not check the feed again. I swore I would keep my eyes closed, that I would not let it drag me deeper into whatever this was. But of course, when the air grew heavy and the silence pressed against my ears, I gave in. The camera showed the hallway empty. For the first time in days, no shadow, no flicker, nothing. I wanted to feel relieved. I wanted to believe it was gone. But the truth was worse. Because if it was not in the hallway, where was it? My dog started growling again, low and steady, staring not at the door this time, but at the bedroom. The hair on his back stood straight up. I did not check the feed after that. I turned off the phone, pulled the blanket over my head like I was a child, and prayed for dawn. But in the silence, I could swear I heard it. The faintest sound of floorboards creaking under a weight that was not mine. By the time the fifth night rolled around, I was a wreck. My body felt like it was running on fumes, twitching with exhaustion, but my mind would not let me close my eyes without terror clawing its way in. Everything in the apartment seemed charged with static, like the air before a storm, heavy and waiting. My dog had stopped barking as much, which was somehow worse. Instead, he sat rigid by the bedroom door, ears back, growling low in his throat for hours on end. He refused to leave that spot, as if he knew exactly where the threat lingered. I kept the lights on again. Every lamp, every overhead bulb, even the dim kitchen fixture that buzzed faintly. Still, it was not enough to chase the feeling away. Shadows clung to the corners of the room no matter how bright I made it. The place felt alive, and not in any way I wanted. I promised myself I would not check the camera, but of course, that was a lie. Around midnight, I opened the feed on my phone and stared at the grainy black and white image of the hallway. Empty. My breath caught. For a moment I thought maybe I had imagined everything after all. Then the screen flickered, and there it was. The figure stood in the middle of the hallway, closer than it had ever been. Its head brushed the ceiling, its shoulders broad and sloped, arms hanging almost to the floor. It was so close to the camera now that the grain struggled to capture it, distorting around the edges of its form. I could not see a face, just a darker mass where its head should be. I wanted to shut the feed off, to throw the phone across the room and never look again, but I could not. I watched as the frames ticked forward. Each flicker brought it closer to the camera, closer to me. My throat tightened as the last frame froze. The figure was no longer in the hallway. It was standing directly in front of the lens, blocking it completely. I dropped the phone. My dog erupted into furious barking, throwing himself against the bedroom door like he was trying to break it down. My pulse pounded in my ears so loudly I thought I would pass out. The lights flickered once, twice, before steadying again, and in that heartbeat of dimness, I swore I saw movement at the edge of the living room. I backed against the wall, clutching the blanket like it was some kind of shield. My dog scratched frantically at the wood, claws screeching, teeth gnashing. Then it came. 3 slow knocks against the bedroom door. The sound froze me in place. Each knock was deliberate, heavy, rattling the frame like something was pressing its weight against it. My dog snarled and lunged, biting at the wood, saliva flying. I tried to whisper to him, tried to calm him, but the words stuck in my throat. All I could do was stare at the door and listen. The knocking stopped. Silence fell so heavy it made my ears ring. My dog whimpered, lowering his head but keeping his eyes locked on the door. I thought maybe it was over, maybe the thing had given up, when the sound came again. Not knocking this time. Scraping. A long, dragging scrape, like fingernails clawing down the wood. The sound made my skin crawl, made my teeth ache. It was slow, steady, deliberate, working its way from the top of the door down to the bottom. The dog howled and backed away, pressing himself against my legs, trembling so hard I could feel it through my bones. I wanted to run. God, I wanted to grab him and run out the front door and never look back. But my body would not move. My feet were lead. My chest felt like it was caving in. All I could do was stand there, shaking, as the scraping continued. Then it stopped. I waited for something else, for the door to burst open, for the lights to fail, for the thing to finally reveal itself fully. But nothing came. The silence stretched on until I could barely breathe. My legs gave out, and I slid down the wall to the floor, pulling my dog into my lap. He buried his face against me, still trembling, still whimpering. We stayed like that until dawn. The morning light crept weakly through the blinds, painting the room in pale stripes. I felt no relief, only a deeper dread settling into my stomach. I forced myself to check the hallway. Empty. The door looked untouched. No marks, no scratches, no dents, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. That day, I could not bring myself to leave the apartment. I paced the rooms, checking every corner, every window, every lock. My dog followed me, never more than a few feet away, eyes always darting to the hallway. I did not eat. I barely drank water. My mind replayed the knocking, the scraping, the sound of something waiting just beyond the door. By evening, I was shaking so badly I could not hold a glass steady. I sat on the couch with my dog pressed against me, staring at the bedroom door, waiting for the sound to come again, waiting for the next nightfall. And that was the worst part, the waiting. Every minute dragged like an hour. Every creak of the building made me flinch. Every shift of shadow felt like it was reaching for me. My heart never slowed, pounding in my chest as though it knew what was coming. When night finally fell, the air grew heavy again. My dog whimpered and pressed closer, his body stiff with fear. The lights flickered once more. I told myself I would not look at the camera again. I told myself I would not give it the satisfaction. But when the silence stretched too long, when the weight of being watched became unbearable, I caved. The feed loaded. The hallway was empty. For a second, I almost believed it. My chest loosened, my eyes stung with relief. But then I saw the timestamp. The feed had frozen hours earlier. It was not showing me the present. I dropped the phone and clutched my dog as the apartment groaned around us, as the lights dimmed, as the air thickened with something that was not supposed to be there. The night was not over. It was only getting closer. By the time the 6th night came, I was not myself anymore. I had not eaten a full meal in days. My skin felt clammy. My head throbbed constantly. And when I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror that afternoon, I did not even recognize my own face. Hollow eyes, lips cracked, jaw tight from clenching through the hours of silence. My dog looked just as worn down, a shadow of himself. His ribs showed more sharply than they had a week earlier. He refused food, only drank a little water when I put it in front of him. He stayed close to me at all times, tail tucked, trembling every time he glanced toward the hallway. That night I did something reckless. I turned off the camera. I could not keep watching it inch closer, frame by frame, night by night. It felt like torture. It felt like I was feeding it somehow, giving it what it wanted by acknowledging its slow crawl toward me. So I shut it off, unplugged it, and shoved it in a drawer. I told myself if I did not look, maybe I could take some of the power back. Of course, that was a lie. The silence that night was heavier than it had ever been. The air pressed against my skin like damp cloth, making it hard to breathe. Every sound in the building seemed to amplify the groan of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, the faint drip of the bathroom sink. My dog whimpered and pressed against me, his body rigid. I stroked his head with a shaking hand, whispering nonsense to him, though my own voice sounded thin and unreal. At some point, I must have dozed, because I woke to the sensation of being stared at. That horrible weight of eyes on me, pressing, suffocating. My dog erupted in a frenzy of barking, teeth bared, body lunging at the empty air near the bedroom door. His hackles rose, every muscle taut with rage and terror. And then the lights went out. Not just flickered out, every bulb, every lamp, all at once. The apartment plunged into blackness so thick it felt solid. My dog barked until his voice cracked, then whimpered, clawing frantically at the couch cushions as if trying to bury himself inside them. In the dark, I heard it, floorboards groaning, one after another. Not random creaks, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving from the hallway into the living room. Closer, closer. My throat closed. I could not scream. I could not even move. I sat frozen, clutching my dog, feeling his body vibrate against mine with raw panic. The footsteps stopped directly in front of me. I do not know how long I sat there, barely breathing, skin prickling, heart hammering so loud I thought it would burst. I waited for something to happen, a hand on my shoulder, a voice in my ear, teeth sinking into flesh, anything. But nothing came. The silence stretched, deeper than ever. When the lights finally flickered back on, the room was empty. The hallway was empty. The door was closed. I stayed frozen until dawn. When sunlight crept through the blinds, I felt no relief, only emptiness. My dog lay curled against me, eyes glazed, too exhausted even to lift his head. I whispered to him, told him it was over. But even I did not believe the words. That morning I packed. Not everything, just a bag of clothes, some cash, my dog's food. I left the rest behind. I locked the door without looking back and drove until the gas tank was nearly empty. I am not in that apartment anymore. I will never go back. But here is the truth that keeps me from sleeping even now. The thing never needed the hallway. It never needed the camera. It wanted me. And once something like that has stepped into your life, into your home, into your bedroom, it does not just stop. The last night I was there, when the lights came back on, I thought I saw something just for an instant, a reflection in the black screen of my phone, lying on the floor where I had dropped it. Not me. Not my dog. Taller, darker, leaning closer than it should have been. I left. Yes, I am somewhere else now, but the hours are the same. Around 3 in the morning, I wake. My dog whimpers. The air feels thick, heavy, expectant. I lie there, staring at the door, waiting for the sound of footsteps, waiting for the scrape of nails. I tell myself it is gone, that it stayed in that place, that I outran it. But the truth is, I do not know. Sometimes, when I walk down the hallway of this new apartment, I catch myself glancing at the far end, expecting to see it standing there, tall, still, waiting, and I think one day I will. We weren't hardcore campers or anything. We'd gone maybe 3 times total, me, Claire, a beat-up tent we borrowed from her brother, and a little propane stove that always smelled slightly like melted plastic. It was mostly about unplugging for the weekend. No service, no emails, no deadlines breathing down our necks. Just trees, firewood, canned chili, and the occasional raccoon bold enough to stare you down for a granola bar. That's what we were expecting when we drove out to Pine Brook State Forest that Friday. We picked the site ahead of time. Lot 23, close enough to the trailheads but far enough from the ranger station that it felt like actual wilderness. There were only 2 other vehicles in the entire loop when we pulled in a rust-colored Subaru with bike racks and this old white van. I remember noticing it right away, mostly because it didn't match the vibe. No campground sticker, no windows except the windshield, just these gray curtains pulled tight behind the glass. Not even a single dent or decal to tell you anything about the driver. Claire made a face when we passed it. "Creeper van," she muttered. "Maybe it's just a solo hiker," I said, "or someone doing the off-grid thing." "Without registering?" she asked. I didn't have an answer for that. We didn't dwell on it, though. Not right away. We set up camp, got the fire going, cracked a couple beers, and made a sad attempt at toasting hot dogs over 2 small flames. Typical first night stuff. When the sun went down, the forest went quiet in that way you forget it can. No sirens, no cars, just the occasional crack of a branch and the distant call of an owl. The van was still sitting there, 2 sites over, but we didn't hear a door open, didn't see a flashlight flicker, nothing, like it was just a prop someone left behind. By the time we crawled into the tent, I'd stopped thinking about it. Claire hadn't. "I swear it hasn't moved since we got here," she whispered, pulling the sleeping bag up to her chin. "Maybe they're just a heavy sleeper," I said. "Half asleep already." She didn't laugh. "Do you think we should have told the ranger?" "What would we say? There's a weird van at a campsite?" "Yeah, pretty much." I shifted onto my side and pulled her in closer. "If it's still there tomorrow, we'll check with them, okay?" She nodded against my chest. Neither of us brought it up the next morning. The van was still there, parked at an angle like it had just coasted into the lot and died. No footprints in the dirt around it, no smoke from a fire. It looked exactly the same, silent, shut. We went for a hike that day, nothing crazy, just a 4-mile loop through a mossy ridge trail that smelled like wet pine needles and took us past some gorgeous overlooks. The kind of walk that usually wrings out your anxiety. But every time I stopped to catch my breath, I caught Claire looking behind us. Not ahead. Behind. That night we ate by lantern light. The fire didn't catch like it had the first night, too damp, too rushed. Neither of us really tried. There was a tension sitting between us that we hadn't spoken out loud yet, but it filled the air like smoke anyway. Around 11, we zipped up the tent and settled in. It was colder that night. The wind came in off the ridge, brushing against the tent walls with soft, shivery pressure. I woke up to the sound of something stepping on dry branches. Not a deer. I know what deer sound like. They're skittish, light on their feet. Whatever this was had weight. I sat up slowly, trying not to make noise, and pressed my hand to Claire's arm. She was already awake, staring at the nylon above us like she could see through it. "Did you hear it?" she whispered. "Yeah." It came again. 2 steps, then silence. I unzipped the tent as quietly as I could and stuck my head out. Nothing. Just the fire pit, now dark, our cooler, the outline of our car. The van was gone. I blinked and leaned further out. Its sight was empty. No tire tracks, no light, no shape. Just the damp gravel lot, hollow and quiet. "Where the hell did it go?" Claire asked, crawling out behind me. "I don't know." We stood there in our socks, breath visible in the cold, both of us turning in slow circles like we were afraid to look in any one direction too long. I felt completely exposed. No locks, no doors. Just canvas and mesh, and the hope that whoever had been nearby wasn't still watching. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. Claire sat cross-legged in the tent, holding the flashlight, while I stayed zipped into my sleeping bag with my pocket knife gripped in one hand like I'd be able to do anything with it. When dawn broke, we didn't even talk about packing. It just happened. We took down the tent in record time, tossed everything into the car, and peeled out of the campsite like something was going to chase us if we stayed 1 second longer. The ranger station was a small log cabin near the park entrance. We pulled in, both of us looking half feral after a night of no sleep and adrenaline. The ranger on duty was maybe in his mid-50s, baseball cap, radio clipped to his vest, seemed surprised to see us. "You two heading out early?" he asked. There was a white van parked near our site, I said, skipping the small talk. No plates, curtains in the window. It was there when we got in Friday. It was gone when we checked last night. His face shifted slightly, not surprise, more like caution. "Which site?" 21, I said. "We were at 23. He checked his clipboard. No one registered for that lot all weekend. I looked at Claire. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest. "I thought you needed a pass," she said. "You do," he replied, slow and deliberate. "And if it wasn't marked on here, they weren't supposed to be out there." We waited for him to say more, call someone, take a note. But he didn't. Later that afternoon, just before we left the park boundaries, Claire asked to walk back to the site. I didn't want to, but I didn't argue. Maybe we both needed closure. The van was still gone. The site looked undisturbed. No trash, no firewood, nothing. but just behind the tree line, half buried under pine needles and blackened dirt, we found the fire pit. Still warm. Inside, a few scorched zippers, part of a canvas strap, and what looked like the melted back panel of a plastic backpack. It was small, too small for an adult, and next to it, half covered in ash, was the edge of a knife blade. Claire didn't say anything. Neither did I. We just turned around and walked back to the car, and we haven't been camping since. We didn't talk much on the drive home. Not even during the stretch of highway that usually had us playing road trip games, joking about pit stops, or ranking which gas station chains had the best snacks. It was like the weight of that van, that place, still sat somewhere in the car with us, and if we said too much, we'd remind it we were there. Claire kept staring out the window with her arms crossed, but I knew she wasn't looking at anything specific, just moving her eyes so her thoughts didn't eat her alive. I was doing the same thing behind the wheel, trying to focus on the lines on the road, the hum of tires, anything that felt predictable. We were an hour out from home when she finally spoke. "That fire pit," she said, still not looking at me. "Did it look fresh to you?" I nodded. Yeah, still warm. Wood hadn't gone out completely. She bit her lip. "So they left after us, or were still there while we were packing." That silence came back, heavier this time. We didn't fill it. When we got home, we did something we'd never done after a trip. We unpacked everything immediately. Tent, sleeping bags, clothes, all of it came out of the car and into the wash or the storage bins before we even sat down. I think we both wanted to scrub the whole experience off ourselves, like maybe if we cleaned fast enough, we wouldn't have to remember it the next day. It didn't work. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the way the dirt around the fire pit had been disturbed, like someone tried to cover the items in a hurry, or maybe they weren't trying to hide it at all. Maybe it was a message. Claire tried to sleep, but gave up around 2. I heard her walking around the apartment, pausing at each window, checking the door chain even though we'd already locked it. I didn't say anything. I just laid in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the occasional creak of the floorboards. The next morning, she had her laptop open before I even made coffee. She was already on the park's website, trying to figure out if there'd been any recent incidents reported in Pine Brook. I sat beside her and refreshed the local news pages on my phone. It felt dumb at first, like we were playing detective for something that could have just been a creepy coincidence, but it didn't feel dumb for long. Claire found it first. A missing persons flyer buried 3 clicks deep on a Facebook page for Pine Brook's volunteer search and rescue group. 10-year-old girl, missing since June, last seen at a roadside gas station 2 towns over. She'd been with her mother. They were traveling cross-country. Security footage showed the girl going into the bathroom and never coming out. "Is that the same backpack?" Claire asked, her voice quiet. I leaned in. It was hard to tell from the grainy image, but the shape of it, the plastic front with the cartoon character, the same color, it matched what we'd seen in the fire pit. Burned, melted, but unmistakable. We didn't speak for a long time. Around noon, I made the decision. We should call it in. Claire looked at me. To who? The local police, maybe, or the rangers. And tell them what? She asked. That we saw a van? That it vanished? That we found a half-burned kid's backpack in the woods? Yes. She didn't answer. But she didn't stop me either. I pulled up the ranger station number and called. The guy who answered didn't sound like the same one from the weekend, but his tone shifted the second I started describing where we'd been. I gave him the site number, told him what we'd seen, the van, the fire pit, the items inside it. There was a long pause after I finished. "You say the van didn't have plates?" he asked. "No front or back. And it was parked at Site 21? Yeah." Another pause. "We've had a few reports like that," he said, his voice quieter now. "Not always at the same site, but close, same description. Old van, white, no plates, always gone before we get there." I gripped the phone tighter. "And the fire pit?" "We'll send someone out to take a look. If it's on park property, we'll flag it." That was it. No more questions, no urgency. Just vague acknowledgement and a promise to flag it. I thanked him and hung up, staring at the phone screen until it dimmed in my hand. Claire walked over, holding her laptop. "There are 6 posts like the one we found," she said. "Same area, all within the last year. Kids, teens, even a couple adults. No confirmed sightings, no leads." She flipped the screen toward me. "These ones were last seen near the interstate off Route 47. That's where we exited to get into Pine Brook." I scrolled through the images. One girl had braids and a pink jacket. Another boy wore a t-shirt with a baseball team I recognized. All smiling, all looking like they had no idea what was waiting for them just a few miles down the road. "We need to tell someone else," I said. "Who?" she asked again, but softer this time. Not because she didn't believe me, because she did. That's what made it worse. That night, the dreams started. I saw the van again parked, silent, facing the forest. I was standing just outside its back doors. They were open. Inside was black, too dark to see, but I could hear something breathing. Not loud, not angry, just waiting. I woke up sweating, the room too hot even with the fan on. Claire was already awake. "I dreamed I was back at the site," she said, "but it wasn't ours. It was the one with the van. The fire pit was gone, but there was something sticking out of the ground. Just the edge of a blanket." We didn't talk about it the rest of the day. But I kept refreshing the missing persons pages. I don't know what I was looking for, some confirmation, a face that would link it all together, or maybe just proof that we weren't going insane. What we found instead came 2 days later. Not from the Park Service, not from the police, but from a comment on a thread buried deep in a forum about strange encounters in national parks. It was one line, posted anonymously. "The van doesn't follow you. It waits for you to come back." And suddenly I realized something that hadn't occurred to me until right then. We left the forest. But we never actually left the story. 3 nights passed without sleep that actually meant anything. Claire tried melatonin. I tried whiskey. Neither worked. At best, we drifted into shallow half-dreams. At worst, we stared at the ceiling until sunrise, watching shadows shift across the walls. By Tuesday, I stopped checking the forums. My head was a mess. Too much scrolling, too many stories. Everyone had a theory. A few even sounded like ours, old vehicles showing up where they shouldn't, no license plates, people watching from inside. But none of them ended with any kind of clarity, just more questions. The posts always faded off, or were deleted, or worse, the original poster stopped replying entirely. Claire had a different strategy. She printed everything. Notes, maps, screenshots. She had this ugly manila folder she carried around now like it was homework for a class she never signed up for. "This isn't just paranoia," she said Thursday morning, flipping through it. "There's a pattern." "I believe you." She looked up, surprised. "I mean it," I said. "I'm just not sure what believing it even does anymore." We were both quiet for a minute. Then she slid a photo across the table. The same girl from the missing flyer, 10 years old, backpack on. Same one we'd seen charred in the pit. But the photo Claire showed me wasn't from the flyer. It was newer. "I found this on a Reddit post," she said. "Some guy talking about trail cam footage he got last month." "Wait, last month?" "Yeah, from the Ridgepoint entrance, northwest edge of Pinebrook." I looked again. It was grainy, black and white, but her outline was clear. Hair tied back, same shoes. She was walking through the trees. Alone. No timestamp, no context, just the photo. "That can't be real," I said. "She's been missing since June." Claire's voice was flat. "I think that van is taking people who are never meant to be found. We made the mistake of talking about it in front of someone else." Friday night, we were out for drinks with Claire's sister and her fiancé. We were trying to be normal again. Claire was picking at her fries. I was nursing a beer that had gone warm 20 minutes ago. Somehow, the conversation turned to camping. "You guys still going out to the woods every other weekend?" her sister asked, smiling. Claire looked at me, then back at her. "Not lately." "Oh, you gotta come out with us sometime," the fiancé said. "We just found a spot up near Westfield, real quiet. No cell towers, no one for miles." Claire didn't even blink. That's kind of the problem. And before I could steer it somewhere else, she started talking about Pinebrook, the van, the missing kid, everything. Her sister's fiancé chuckled halfway through. Not a mocking laugh, more like polite confusion. "You mean like an urban legend?" Claire stared at him. "We saw the backpack. It was burned. Someone buried it." He tried to recover, raising his hands. "No, I believe you saw something. It's just..." He glanced at me. "Come on. You don't really think someone's driving around national parks stealing people in a creepy van and no one notices?" "I didn't either," I said quietly, "until it happened." The mood tanked after that. We didn't stay much longer. When we got home, Claire didn't even take her shoes off. She went straight to the kitchen and started pulling out boxes, the ones we hadn't touched since we moved in. Old photos, receipts, printouts from earlier research. I followed her in. "What are we doing?" She paused, one hand in the box. "If the cops won't investigate it, we need to," she said. "Claire, we're not detectives. We're barely functioning adults." She pulled something out and held it up. A Pine Brook trail map. Marked in red was our site 23, then 21, where the van had been, and about a half-mile west, a sharp X. "What's that?" She tapped it. "Where I think the van came from. There's no road on the map, but when we were hiking, remember that overgrown path? It looked like tire ruts, just faint." I did remember. She grabbed her phone and pulled up satellite view. There it was, barely visible, but a dirt stretch curling off the main road, vanishing into the tree line. "I think there's something back there," she said. "A shed, a cabin, something they use." I stared at her. "You want to go back?" "Not want," she said, "but yeah." I didn't say anything right away. But I felt it too, that tension that doesn't let go of your spine, the one that says you've seen something you weren't supposed to, and if you walk away now, you'll never know how deep the hole goes. We planned it that night. One day, in and out. No camping, no wandering, just enough to find out if we were crazy or not. We left Saturday at sunrise. No bags, just flashlights, gloves, and a portable scanner Claire borrowed from a coworker who used it for geocaching. It was supposed to pick up metal or signs of tampering in the ground. We weren't sure it'd help, but it made us feel like we had a purpose. We parked a mile from Pine Brook's main entrance, walked the rest of the way through a back trail. The weather was cold, dry. The kind that made your breath visible and your fingers go numb by the time you'd zipped your coat. When we got to lot 23, everything was as we'd left it. Empty. We didn't stop. We followed the trail for about 10 minutes before Claire spotted the turnoff. The ruts were there. Faint, overgrown with brush and moss, but there. She looked at me, then started walking. We didn't talk much after that. The path curved sharply left, then widened into a shallow clearing. And there it was. A van. Not the van, at least not visibly the same. This one had been there for a while, covered in pine needles and rust, tires deflated, back doors sealed shut with what looked like an old bike chain. Claire walked around it once, slowly. She tapped the scanner near the base of the back doors. It chirped. Then she scanned the ground nearby. Another ping. She dropped to her knees and started brushing away the leaves. And there, buried in a shallow impression in the dirt, was another fire pit, long dead, but inside it half-melted toys, a phone case, what looked like the edge of a shoe. Children's size. Claire stood up, hands shaking. "This wasn't just one person," she said. I felt something then. Not fear. Something worse. Like we were too close to something we had no business finding. Like the trees around us were suddenly listening. And maybe, just maybe, the van we saw hadn't ever really left. We didn't speak on the walk back, not at first. Claire had her phone out, snapping photos of the van, the fire pit, even the tire ruts in the dirt. She moved with this steady, determined calm I hadn't seen in her since the day after the original trip. Like the second she knelt down and uncovered that fire pit, something inside her clicked into place. Not fear, not panic, just clarity. Me? I kept looking over my shoulder. There was this feeling I couldn't shake, like we weren't supposed to have found any of it, that we'd wandered somewhere we weren't meant to go, and now the forest had noticed. Not in a supernatural way, just eyes, people, watching, waiting. We got back to the main trail around noon. Still no signs of rangers, no other hikers, no campers, and no van in Lot 21, either the spot it had been parked at a week earlier. It was all too quiet. When we reached the car, Claire slid into the passenger seat without saying a word and started uploading the photos to a cloud folder, marking each one by timestamp and GPS data. She'd been using an offline mapping app that logged everything. She was methodical like that, the kind of person who highlighted books and kept receipts. I didn't start the car yet. Instead, I sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the same trees we'd stared at the first time we pulled in. "We're not done, are we?" I asked. Claire didn't look up, not even close. When we got home, she contacted the families. She didn't tell me right away, just started sending messages through social media, carefully worded and direct. She said if she were them, she'd want to know. That maybe they'd been waiting for someone to say, "Hey, I saw something," even if it didn't change the outcome. I watched from the hallway while she typed. Her shoulders were tense, focused. I knew better than to interrupt. 2 responded that night. One thanked her, said the police had stopped updating them months ago. The other asked for copies of the photos. The 3rd reply came the next day, different tone, nervous, almost like they were afraid to say too much over a direct message. Claire read it out loud. "We saw the same van when our son went missing. No one believed us. It was in the parking lot that day, windows blacked out. My husband tried to take a photo, but the driver sped off. No plates." She paused, then whispered the next part. "They come back." We went to the police. It felt ridiculous, walking into a station with printed screenshots and trail maps. We expected rolled eyes, maybe even a polite "we'll look into it" before getting brushed off. But what we got was worse. The officer at the front desk barely let us finish before holding up his hand. "You're not the first," he said. Claire and I exchanged a look. He leaned forward. "You think this is the first time someone's come in here with stories about that forest? People talk. People come in shaking, pale, saying they saw something. But no one brings proof." Claire slid the stack of photos across the desk. He glanced at them, mouth twitching like he didn't want to admit he was interested. "What do you want us to do with this?" "Investigate," Claire said flatly. "Go to the site, check the van. That pit had children's items in it." He tapped the stack once, then exhaled. "I'll pass it along," he said, "but off the record, this kind of thing doesn't go anywhere, not unless it's happening in someone's backyard or goes viral. And even then, it gets buried fast." Claire's jaw tightened. "Why?" He hesitated, then said something that stuck with me more than anything else. "Because it's cleaner to pretend these people never existed than to admit we lost them." That night, I couldn't sit still. Claire was organizing her files again, posting in online forums under an alias, tagging news outlets, even starting a private thread to compile other stories. Meanwhile, I was pacing. Every time I passed the living room window, I checked the street. Nothing, but I kept checking anyway. Finally, around 2 a.m., I stepped outside. No sounds, no cars. The kind of silence you only hear right before something breaks it. I walked to the curb and stood there, looking up and down the road. And that's when I saw it. Headlights, far end of the block, just sitting there, not moving. I narrowed my eyes. White. I walked back inside without saying anything to Claire. The lights were gone by the time I looked out the window again. The next morning there was an envelope on our doorstep. No name, no return address. Just a single photo inside. It was us. Me and Claire, from behind, in the woods. Taken from a distance, like through brush. I stared at it for a long time before flipping it over. On the back, written in tiny black ink, were the words, "You're looking too hard." Claire stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. She didn't speak, just reached out, took the photo, and placed it inside her folder. Then she locked the deadbolt on the front door and pulled the curtains shut. We stopped going out much after that. Groceries were done late at night, no more hikes, no more back roads. If we didn't have to be somewhere, we weren't. Claire set up a camera at the front door, then the back, then 2 more for the windows. We changed our route to work, changed our phones, changed passwords. But still, once, while taking the trash out, I found a cigarette butt tucked under the edge of our doormat. We don't smoke. Another time, Claire swore someone had gone through her car, nothing missing, just the glove box left open. Whatever this was, whoever they were, they wanted us to know they were close. But they also wanted us to stop. Weeks passed. The police never followed up. None of the forums responded to Claire's thread. One of the families we spoke to deleted their social media altogether. It was like someone had hit a reset button on the whole thing, scrubbing it clean, pretending it never happened. I wanted to stop thinking about it, wanted to pretend we'd just imagined the worst. But late one night, I walked out to the porch and sat in the dark. No phone, no flashlight. Just me and the quiet. And after a few minutes, I realized something that chilled me more than the photo, more than the fire pit, more than the officer's warning. The forest wasn't following us. We were still in it. It was about 3 in the morning when I woke up to the sound of Claire moving around in the kitchen. She wasn't trying to be quiet, but she also wasn't loud. Cabinet doors opened slowly, closed gently. Drawers sliding open in little bursts. I laid there listening for a minute before calling out, "What are you doing?" She didn't answer at first. Then I heard the fridge open and close, followed by the rustle of paper, maybe foil, maybe something in a bag. I sat up. "Claire." She came into the room a second later, hair a mess, eyes wide but unfocused, like she hadn't slept at all, like she hadn't stopped moving long enough to try. She held something in her hand, a printout. "There's another one," she said. It took me a second to process. Another what? Post, same van, same area, just uploaded 20 minutes ago. I took it from her. It was a screenshot of a Facebook post from someone named Greg L. The photo was blurry, taken through a window, probably a moving car, but unmistakable. The van was there, white, windowless, same size. No plates, parked along a fire road on the edge of Pine Brook. The caption was short. Saw this van parked near Trailhead 9. No one inside. Creeped me out. Left fast. I handed it back to her. This is recent. Yeah. And guess what? She said, turning back toward her laptop. That trailhead wasn't even open last time we were there. It was blocked off for maintenance. I pulled the blanket around my shoulders and followed her. On the screen, she had a map open, side by side with satellite view. There was the trailhead deep on the northwest edge of the park, just past a bend in the river trail. According to Claire, it had been closed due to flooding over the summer. They reopened it last week, she said, quietly, no announcement, just removed the barriers. And that's where it showed up. She nodded. We stared at the screen together. Then she clicked to another tab, one I hadn't seen before. It was a shared spreadsheet. Names, dates, locations, notes. You made a list, I said quietly. I've been keeping track of everything, every mention, every story. It's always near a trailhead, always off-season, always no plates. I scrolled through the entries. There were over 30. This is more than I thought, I said. It's more than anyone thinks, she replied, because no one's putting the pieces together. By sunrise, we'd decided. We were going back. Not to hike, not to camp, not even to wander near the sites we'd been to before. Just to watch. To sit near Trailhead 9 with a camera and a pair of binoculars and see what showed up. Maybe we'd catch a license plate, maybe a face, maybe nothing. But we had to go. We left that afternoon. Claire packed like she was prepping for a stakeout, camera batteries, snacks, extra SD cards. She'd even borrowed a long-lens DSLR from her coworker for wildlife photography, which wasn't technically a lie. I drove. The closer we got, the quieter it became inside the car. No music. Just the occasional highway noise and the soft sound of Claire flipping through her notes again, double-checking details she already knew by heart. We parked half a mile from the trailhead, near a stretch of road that curved around a ridge and offered a clear view of the lot. There were no other cars, just a wide gravel loop, half covered in leaves. Claire set up the camera in the back seat, pointing through the windshield. I kept my eyes on the trail entrance. We waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Still nothing. Claire tapped her pen against the armrest. This is how it always happens, she said. They don't come when you're watching. They came before, I said. Because we weren't looking. The sun dipped lower behind the trees. The air got colder. I turned on the car heater for a few minutes, trying not to fog up the windows. Then, just as the sky started to go gray, Claire leaned forward. There. I followed her gaze. The van. Coming from the north, slow and deliberate, like it wasn't in a hurry. No headlights, no markings, just white metal against the fall colors. It turned into the lot, rolled halfway through, then backed into a spot with the rear facing the tree line. From our distance, we couldn't see inside, couldn't make out the driver. but the camera caught it all. Claire clicked the shutter, then again and again, until the van disappeared behind the tree cover. We waited another hour. No one got out. No one got in. It just sat there. And then just like that it pulled out and drove off. Back the way it came. Gone. Claire leaned back in her seat and let out a breath she'd been holding for way too long. "We got it," she said. "That's the van." I nodded. "Now what?" She turned toward me, eyes locked on mine. "Now we find out where it goes." We followed at a distance, just enough to keep it in view without drawing attention. It turned onto a fire road unmarked, then kept going. Eventually, it led to another clearing, not the one we'd found last time, a different spot. More remote. There were signs of a campsite, old fire ring, patches of disturbed dirt, and a tarp. Folded. Stained. Claire took more photos. Then she crouched and pulled something from the leaves. A shoe. Kid's size again. She didn't speak. Neither did I. Just then, a sound faint but unmistakable. A snap. A branch. We turned together. In the shadows of the trees, just past the tarp, someone was standing. Watching. Not moving, not speaking. Just there. Claire grabbed my arm, and we backed away slowly, keeping our eyes forward, not turning our backs. When we finally got to the car, I fumbled the keys, hands shaking. We drove. Fast. Didn't stop until we hit pavement again. Claire's hands were clenched white around the camera. "We're not making this up," she said. "I know. And if we are..." She trailed off. We didn't finish that sentence. It was almost a month before we went back. Not because we wanted to, not even because we thought we'd be safer, but because something changed, something that didn't make sense and wouldn't leave us alone. It started with Claire's phone. She kept all the evidence we'd gathered stored on the cloud, every photo, every screenshot, even audio recordings of conversations we'd had about it. She backed them up twice, one local, one online. The folder was titled something vague, so it wouldn't stand out. But one morning, while doing routine checks, she noticed it was gone. Not corrupted, not deleted by accident, gone. The physical hard drive wouldn't open. The files showed empty, like they'd never been there. When she went to log into the cloud backup, the account had been locked due to unusual activity. When she finally got back in, the folder was there, but every single file had been replaced with a blank image named 404 JPG. That was when we knew. It wasn't just the van. It was whoever was behind it, watching, scrubbing, closing every door we opened. So we made a decision. We'd go back to the woods. One last time. Not to chase the van, not to get revenge, but to bury it all, the fear, the obsession in something solid, proof that wouldn't vanish with a power outage. We bought a disposable film camera, no GPS, no connection. We'd photograph what we could and leave the prints in a safe deposit box under Claire's cousin's name. She didn't even know we were doing it. That was the point. If anything happened to us, if everything got wiped again, the truth would still exist somewhere else. We returned on a Tuesday. Middle of the day, overcast skies, just enough cloud cover to keep most hikers away. We parked in the same lot as before, only this time we didn't go near our old site. We followed the overgrown trail again, the same one that led to the abandoned van, the shallow fire pit, and whatever else had been half buried in that forgotten stretch of forest. But the van was gone. Not just gone, erased. No rust stains on the ground, no tire ruts. The grass had grown back where we'd walked just weeks earlier, like nothing had been there in years. The fire pit was gone too, covered, smoothed out. Someone or something had been through. Maybe it was never there, I whispered, already knowing that wasn't true. Claire didn't reply. She took out the film camera and snapped a photo anyway, of the clearing, of the tree line, of the spot where we remembered it all happening. Even if we can't prove what it was, she said, her voice steady, we can prove something was here. We hiked deeper, following instinct more than map. Claire noticed at first the smell. Rotting wood, wet metal, something sour underneath it all. It led us to a shed. Not big, just enough for one or two people to stand in, half covered in moss, almost hidden beneath a fallen pine. The door was locked with a rusted padlock. I checked the edges, gave the handle a pull. It didn't budge. Claire raised the camera again. Just as she clicked the shutter, something moved behind us. I turned. Nothing. No footsteps, no birds, not even the usual hum of bugs. It was the kind of silence you feel, not hear. Claire whispered, "Let's go." And we did. We didn't run. We walked, slow and even, never looking back. Because deep down, we both knew if we turned around, we wouldn't be alone. We drove straight from Pine Brook to the photo lab. We paid in cash, using fake names we'd joked about years ago, inside jokes that suddenly didn't feel funny anymore. The technician said the prints would be ready in 24 hours. We didn't sleep that night, not out of fear, just this tight humming alertness that never dipped low enough to allow rest. The next day, the photos were ready. They were clear, unaltered, tangible. The clearing, the trees, the shed. A few of them showed faint impressions in the grass, like something heavy had once sat there. Claire sorted the photos carefully, choosing half to go into the deposit box, the rest to be stored at her aunt's house in a locked filing cabinet, buried behind decades of old tax paperwork. We didn't post them. We didn't try to contact journalists. Not again. Instead, we made peace with something harder. We'd carry this story. Just us. Just the truth we knew, without proof, the world would accept. And that was enough. It had to be. The next week we moved. Not far, just out of the city and into a quieter part of the county where the neighbors didn't ask questions and the nights didn't echo quite as loud. We didn't talk about Pine Brook much after that. We went back to work, went out sometimes, laughed when we could, though the laughter always felt a little thinner than before. But we were okay. Changed, yeah, but alive. Some nights, the woods still followed us in our dreams, and once in a while I'd swear I saw a white van parked a few blocks away from our new place. Not every day, just enough to remind me. I never approached it, and it always disappeared by morning. A year later, we got a letter. No return address, no stamp. Inside was a photograph. It was us, standing outside the shed. Same moment Claire had taken the picture. Only this one had been taken from behind, at an angle neither of us could have captured. No note, no signature, just the photo. We didn't panic, we didn't scream. Claire placed the photo in a sealed envelope and added it to the box in the deposit vault. No one else would understand what it meant. But we did. They were done chasing us because we had stopped chasing them. We never went back to Pine Brook. And maybe that's what kept us safe. Some doors, once opened, don't close easily. Some forests remember your footsteps no matter how lightly you tread. But if there's one thing we learned, it's this. When you see a van with no plates, curtains drawn tight, parked where it shouldn't be, don't look for the driver. Don't wait for the lights. Don't try to find the story behind it. Just leave. Because the moment you start asking questions, you're already part of the answer. It all came to a head because of a typo. Claire was reviewing her notes, something she'd done probably 100 times by now, and realized she'd miswritten one of the trail cam coordinates. She pulled up the satellite view again and zoomed in farther than she had before. The path didn't just lead to that abandoned van in the woods. There was something else. A clearing deeper in, about 30 yards beyond the van site, barely visible from the angle we'd approached it from the first time, but it was there, flat ground, something buried beneath the brush. Maybe a structure, or the remains of one. We had a choice, leave it alone, or go back one last time. We went, not out of obsession, out of necessity, because the next time might not come with a warning, and we were done waiting for permission. We told no one. Left our phones at home, wrote a note with the GPS coordinates and left it in the glove box of my car, in case something happened. Paranoia? Maybe, but we'd earned that. It took us 2 hours of hiking to reach the clearing. The terrain was harder than before. Roots, dense brambles, overgrowth thick enough that Claire had to pull her scarf over her mouth just to keep the debris out. And then the trees broke, and we saw it. It wasn't a cabin or shack. It was a pit, roughly the size of a single car, dug into the earth and partially collapsed on one side. On the other, thin metal rods jutted out, maybe the foundation of something old, maybe just rebar. There were signs of past fire, same as before. Scorched dirt, blackened stone, charred metal scraps. Claire was the first to move. She knelt near the edge and started digging gently with her gloves. After maybe 10 minutes, her hand hit something hard. Not stone, not wood, plastic. She unearthed it slowly, a lid to a storage bin, melted slightly but still intact. Inside were fragments of clothing, strips of faded fabric, a pair of small shoes, a Ziploc bag with a photo half curled inside. a girl in a school uniform smiling awkwardly at the camera. I didn't recognize her. Claire did. She was in one of the posts, she said, a year ago. Virginia, not even from this state. We both sat back, quiet. There was no longer any question. This wasn't isolated. This wasn't one person or one van. It was a system, a rotating method, a trap that moved through parks and forests like a drifting shadow, not staying long enough to leave proof, just long enough to take. And they were counting on no one looking too closely. We brought everything we found to the authorities. But this time we didn't go local. We went federal. Claire sent a packet directly to the FBI, not the general tip line, but an actual agent she tracked down from a national task force on missing persons. She included everything: photos, coordinates, timelines, even the map overlays. Then we waited. And for the first time in months, someone responded. They showed up 2 weeks later. 2 unmarked sedans, federal IDs, real agents. They asked a lot of questions about the van, about the clearing, about how we'd gotten involved. They took our original folder, scanned our trail maps, and asked us not to speak to media just yet. Claire asked them point blank, "Is this part of something bigger?" The older agent, the one who hadn't said much until then, looked at us for a long moment. "There's more like you," he said finally. "People who got too close to something they were never supposed to see. Some vanish, some get scared and shut up, but every once in a while someone brings us enough to open the door." That was it. He didn't elaborate. They left, and we haven't heard from them since. Weeks passed, then months. The missing posters didn't disappear, but some of the families started getting updates. Quiet ones, no details, just acknowledgments that new information had come in. We were never named. Not officially. But I think they knew. And we didn't need credit. We just wanted it to stop. Claire changed after that. Not in a bad way. She just softened. The constant tension left her shoulders. The folder stayed on a shelf, untouched now. She didn't check the curtains every hour anymore. We still don't camp. Probably never will again. The gear is long gone. But we take walks. We drive the coast. We breathe better. As for me, sometimes I still dream about the van. Not in a terrifying way, more like a memory that lingers in the walls of your mind, something half forgotten that comes back in flashes. A sound of branches cracking too close. A car with no plates parked one space over. A shadow watching from the tree line, waiting to see if you notice. But then I wake up, and I check the locks, and I look out the window, and there's nothing there, because they're not following us anymore. We looked back, and they don't like being seen. The first time I heard the knock, I thought it was a dream. I had drifted into that shallow sleep where every sound in the building bleeds into your subconscious, and when the tapping came, I rolled over and told myself it was part of whatever half-dream I had been having. But when I glanced at the clock on the nightstand, it was exactly 2:45 in the morning, and the knock came again. 3 steady raps, slow and patient, echoing from the front door. I live alone. My apartment is not in a bad neighborhood, but it is not exactly the kind of place where you leave the door unlocked or open the blinds after dark. I sat up, straining to hear through the quiet. The knock came once more, the same rhythm, like whoever was out there knew exactly how much space to leave between each tap. At first I thought it might be someone in the wrong unit. It has happened before, drunk neighbors fumbling with keys in the wrong door, but those are usually loud, clumsy mistakes. This was different. This was deliberate. I slid out of bed and crept down the hall, every floorboard creaking like it was betraying me. The peephole was a dull circle in the dark wood. I hesitated, then pressed my eye against it. She was standing there. A woman, tall, too thin, her long hair hanging forward so that it hid most of her face. She stood perfectly still, not fidgeting, not shifting her weight, just waiting. The only thing I could see clearly through the strands of hair was her mouth. Lips parted slightly, like she was whispering to herself. I stumbled back from the door, heart hammering in my chest. I did not call out. I did not turn on the light. I just waited, holding my breath, as the silence stretched on. After a long minute, I crept back and looked again. She was gone. The hallway outside was empty. No footsteps, no sound of retreat, just gone. I told myself it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe someone visiting a neighbor. Maybe just some junkie who knocked at random and wandered off. I went back to bed, though it took hours to fall asleep, my ears tuned to every creak and hum of the building. The next night, it happened again. 2:45 on the dot, 3 slow knocks. This time I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, telling myself not to move. I tried to convince myself it would go away faster if I ignored it. But my curiosity ate at me until I found myself back at the door, pressing my eye to the peephole. She was there again. Same long hair veiling her face, same stillness, same parted lips. It was like she had not moved since the night before, as if she had just been waiting outside the entire time for me to come back. I whispered, "Who are you?" My voice barely audible. Her lips moved. I could not hear it at first, but then a sound slipped through the door. A single word, a name, my name, spoken softly, like she had known me for years. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. I staggered back, every nerve screaming, the urge to throw the lock and run pulsing through my head. But my feet would not move. I just stood there, heart pounding, until I realized the knocking had stopped. When I finally looked again, she was gone. For the rest of the night I sat on the couch with every light on, waiting for another knock that never came. The air felt heavy, like the whole apartment was holding its breath. I did not sleep at all. The third night I decided I would be ready. I turned on the porch light before bed, thinking maybe if she came back, I would catch her face properly, see if it was just some strange neighbor I had never noticed. At 2:45, the knock came, steady as always. I lunged for the peephole, but the porch light should have been enough to reveal her. Instead, it flickered once and went out, leaving only the dim glow of the hallway lamp beyond her. Her hair still covered her face, her head tilted slightly, as if listening for me breathing inside. This time I shouted. My voice cracked, but I yelled through the door anyway. "Leave me alone." For a second, there was silence. Then she whispered my name again, only clearer this time, stretched out, savoring each syllable. I backed into the living room, shaking, phone clutched in my hand. I nearly dialed the police, but I kept hesitating. What was I supposed to say? That some woman had knocked politely on my door. That she had whispered my name like she knew me. They would tell me it was nothing, or worse, that it was in my head. By the time I finally looked again, she was gone. The porch light blinked back on like nothing had happened. The next morning, I convinced myself to check the hallway. I needed proof, something tangible. At first, everything looked normal. No sign anyone had been there. Then I glanced down. Muddy footprints. Small, narrow, leading from the front door into my hallway. Only a few steps, but unmistakably there, pressed into the wood like damp shadows. The lock was still engaged. The chain was still in place, but somehow she had been inside. That was when the fear shifted into something worse. This was not just about knocking anymore. It was not about scaring me from the other side of the door. Somehow, she had already crossed that line. And if she could get in once, I knew she would not stop until she came in again. The morning after finding those muddy footprints, I tried convincing myself there had to be some explanation. Maybe I tracked them in myself the day before and just forgot. Maybe it was some kind of leak in the ceiling, dripping dirt onto the floorboards. My brain latched onto every excuse it could think of, because the alternative was too much to handle. But the longer I stared at the prints, the harder it was to believe they were anything other than exactly what they looked like. Bare feet, small, wet, stepping in from outside. I scrubbed the floor until my knees ached, but even when the stains faded, I could still see the faint outline in my head. It was like the image was burned into me. The worst part was that the prints stopped halfway through the hall. There was no return path, just a few steps inside, and then nothing, as if whoever left them had walked into my apartment and vanished. That evening, I decided to call the police. I kept it simple. I said there had been someone knocking at my door every night, and now I had found footprints inside. They sent a patrol car. 2 officers came, a man and a woman, both wearing the kind of detached calm you only get from years of dealing with paranoid tenants and noisy neighbors. They checked the hall. They looked at the door. I showed them the photographs I had taken of the footprints before cleaning. The male officer frowned and said it looked odd, but without any sign of forced entry, there was not much they could do. He asked if maybe I had left a window open. I told him I lived on the 3rd floor, all the windows locked, all the screens intact. The female officer gave me a polite smile and said, "Sometimes stress makes people imagine things." That word stuck with me long after they left. Imagine. The second night after that, I told myself I would stay up and wait for her. I made coffee, left all the lights on, sat on the couch facing the door. Around 2:30, I started to get restless. My eyes kept darting to the clock. When it finally clicked to 2:45, the knock came. 3 taps, slow, patient. I was already staring at the door when it happened, and the sound rattled through me like a hammer. I forced myself to get up, every muscle in my body screaming to sit back down. I pressed my eye to the peephole. She was there. The same woman, the same hair draped over her face, the same posture of waiting. But this time, when I leaned close, her head tilted slightly, like she knew I was watching her. I whispered through the door, "What do you want?" Her lips moved, no sound at first. Then, faint, almost like breath against my ear, she said, "Let me in." I jumped back. I shouted at her to go away. The knocking started again, harder this time, pounding instead of tapping. The entire door shook in its frame, though the lock and chain rattled but held. My heart was going so fast I thought it would stop. Then, as suddenly as it started, the noise ceased. I crept back to the peephole. Empty hall. I sat down on the floor against the wall, shaking. I do not know how long I stayed there, but when I finally stood up, the sun was already coming through the blinds. The next morning, the bathroom mirror was fogged over. I had not taken a shower. I had not even run the tap. But across the glass, written in clear lines through the mist, were 3 words. "Let me in." That broke something in me. I stopped pretending this was just some stranger with a sick sense of humor. No one had been in the apartment, no one living, anyway. I called off work, sat at the kitchen table staring at that mirror for hours, wondering if I should just pack my things and run. But where would I go? What if she followed? That night, I tried something new. Instead of waiting in the living room, I stayed in my bedroom with the door locked. I figured if I could not hear the knock, maybe it would not happen. Maybe ignoring her completely would make her lose interest. But at 2:45, the sound came anyway. Not from the front door this time, from my bedroom window. 3 slow taps against the glass. I sat up in bed, blood rushing in my ears. The curtains were drawn, but the shape behind them was unmistakable. A figure, tall, standing right outside, even though I was on the 3rd floor. I could see the faint outline of her hand pressing against the fabric. I could not move. My body locked up as the tapping continued, steady, insistent. Then, in the silence between the knocks, a voice whispered through the glass. My name. I screamed. I do not even remember deciding to. It just ripped out of me. The sound seemed to break the moment. The silhouette faded. The pressure on the curtain lifted. When I finally pulled the fabric back, the window was empty. No footprints on the sill this time, but I knew she had been there. The following day, I barely functioned. My co-workers noticed, but I brushed them off. How could I explain? At lunch, I overheard one of them talking about local legends, urban myths, that kind of thing. I almost interrupted, desperate to ask if anyone had ever heard of a woman who knocked, a woman who whispered names through doors and windows, but I kept my mouth shut. Something told me speaking about her out loud only made her stronger. That night, I tried barricading the door. I stacked furniture, wedged a chair beneath the handle. I even sprinkled salt along the threshold, some half-remembered trick from childhood ghost stories. When 2:45 rolled around, I sat there clutching a kitchen knife, waiting. The knock came, louder than ever, shaking the frame, rattling the pictures on the walls. My barricade trembled, but the door held. Then came the voice, right against the wood. Let me in. I pressed my hands to my ears, tears streaming down my face. The pounding went on and on until I thought the wood would splinter. Then, silence. When I dared to look, she was gone. But when I turned back toward the living room, I froze. Every mirror in the apartment was fogged over. Bathroom, closet door, even the small decorative one in the hall. And on every single one of them, the same words scrawled through the mist. Let me in. I started leaving the lights on in every room. It made the apartment glow like a lantern from the street, but I did not care. Darkness felt like an invitation, like the moment the shadows thickened, she would find a way through. Sleep barely came, and when it did, I would jolt awake from dreams that felt too close to real. Dreams where I was standing at the door, staring through the peephole, only to find her face pressed against the glass from the inside. By the end of that week, my nerves were shot. I tried to tell myself again and again that it was a prank, that maybe some local kids had heard I lived alone and were having their fun with me. But every time I tried to build that excuse into something believable, I ran headfirst into the same brick wall. How do kids get footprints into a locked hallway? How do they fog up every mirror at once without me hearing? How do they whisper my name through a window 3 stories up? The next time she came, I dialed the police while the knocking was still happening. The dispatcher's voice was flat, clearly unimpressed with the words tumbling out of me. But I stayed on the line until the pounding stopped, and eventually another patrol car pulled up outside. 2 different officers this time. They checked the hallway, the stairwell, even the street outside. Nothing. They came back with their notepads and asked if I had been drinking, if I was under any medication. I could hear the doubt in their voices, the same weary tone they had probably used 100 times before. I told them about the muddy footprints, about the writing on the mirrors, about the whispers through the window. They exchanged a look, one of those quick glances people give when they are already deciding not to believe you. The male officer said maybe I was under stress. The female officer told me to install a security camera if it would make me feel better. They left soon after, and the hollow sound of their boots retreating down the hall left me more alone than before. So I bought a camera, one of those motion-activated kinds that sends a notification straight to your phone. I set it up across from the door, angled perfectly at the entrance. That night I sat up in bed staring at the feed. At 2:45, right on time, the alert buzzed. I forced myself to look. The video showed her standing in front of the door, still, waiting, her hair falling across her face, her head slightly tilted. The knock came, and the camera caught the exact motion of her hand rising and falling. For a long time she just stood there. Then, as if she knew she was being watched, her head turned slowly, and for the first time I saw more of her face. Pale skin, eyes that looked too dark, too deep, as if they had been dug out rather than set in, and her mouth. She smiled, wide and unnatural, lips cracking at the edges. Then the video cut to static. I stared at the frozen image until my phone screen dimmed. When I replayed it, the feed skipped straight from her standing at the door to an empty hallway. The recording of her face, that smile, was gone. The next morning the camera itself was on the floor, still plugged in, still functional, but knocked from its perch like someone had slapped it aside. The door was locked. The chain was still latched. That day, exhaustion finally caught up with me at work. I nodded off at my desk, jerking awake when my coworker touched my shoulder. She gave me a worried look, asked if I was okay. I told her I had not been sleeping well, left it at that. I could not tell her the truth. That night, the knocking did not come. At first I thought it meant she was gone. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for the 3 raps that never came. I even let myself hope for a second that maybe ignoring her, refusing to acknowledge her, had worked. But then the bathroom light flicked on by itself. I crept down the hall, every hair on my body standing on end. The mirror was fogged again, though I had not used the shower, and across it, written larger than ever, were the same 3 words. Let me in. I pressed my hand against the glass. It was ice cold, colder than it should have been. Then, faintly, a knock echoed behind the mirror. 3 slow raps, coming from the other side of the wall. I stumbled back, nearly slipping on the tiles. The mirror cleared slowly, the letters fading, until only my reflection remained. My reflection, except it did not move quite right. It lingered just a heartbeat too long when I tilted my head, like it was hesitating before copying me. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the floor of the living room, every light blazing, clutching the knife again. At some point I must have drifted, because I woke with a start to silence so heavy it felt like a weight pressing on me. The clock read 3 in the morning. No knock, no voice, no fogged mirrors. But when I checked the hallway camera in the morning, there was a new video. It showed me sitting in the living room, knife in my hand, head lolling as I nodded off. Then, slowly, from the corner of the frame, a pale face slid into view, pressed right against the peephole from the inside. The video ended there. That was when I realized it was not about the door anymore. It was not about her waiting to be let in. She was already here. After seeing that video, I knew there was no safety in my own apartment anymore. It was not just that she had managed to get inside. It was that she had chosen to show me. She wanted me to know she was already here, and she wanted me to sit with that knowledge, powerless to stop her. I thought about leaving, but something inside me twisted when I considered it. If she had followed me into the mirrors, if she had pressed her face against the peephole from the inside, then the apartment was not the limit. It was me. She had attached herself to me like a shadow, and there was no guarantee that walking away from the building would change anything. The next few days blurred together. I went to work like normal, though I remember almost nothing from those hours. I would come home to lights I did not remember turning on, to faucets dripping that I swore I had shut tight. Every night at the same time I waited for the knock, and when it came, it was no longer only from the front door. Sometimes it came from the walls, hollow and patient. Sometimes it came from the floor, 3 muffled raps rising up from beneath me. The mirrors became worse. It started with the words written in fog, but soon it escalated. One night, I caught my reflection moving when I had not. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but enough to make my heart stutter. My hand would lag a second behind the real one, or my face would twitch into an expression I had not made. I stopped looking in mirrors altogether after that. I draped towels and sheets over them, but by morning they were uncovered again, spotless, as if someone had carefully folded the covers away. By the end of the week, I could not ignore it anymore. I drove to the library and sat in the back corner, combing through old microfilm records, searching for anything about the building, about a woman who might match what I was seeing. Hours passed with nothing but blurry headlines about robberies and broken pipes. Then, almost at random, I found a short obituary buried in the local section. It was for a woman in her 30s who had lived in the building decades earlier. The obituary said little, only that she had died suddenly in her home and that no foul play was suspected. There was no photo, just her name, which meant nothing to me. But what caught me was the time, 2:45 in the morning. The record listed it exactly. I left the library shaking, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as if mocking me. She had died at that time, and now she knocked at that time. It felt too neat, too precise. That night I made a mistake. I decided to talk to her. When the knock came steady against the door, I pressed my hands flat against the wood and whispered, "What do you want?" For a long moment, there was silence. Then her voice seeped through the door like smoke through cracks. "You." Just that. One word, heavy and certain. I backed away until I hit the wall. The knocks began again, louder this time, rattling the chain. Every hair on my body stood on end as the sound followed me, shifting from the door to the wall behind me, to the floor under my feet. It was everywhere at once, like the whole apartment had become her fist. I screamed at her to stop. The noise ceased instantly, so fast it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I stood there, shaking, knife clutched in my hand, waiting for it to begin again. Instead, the bathroom light flicked on. I inched down the hall, my stomach lurching with every step. The mirror was uncovered, gleaming. And for the first time, the fog was not words. It was a face. Her face, pressed against the other side of the glass. The long hair parted just enough to reveal eyes that were pits of darkness. Her mouth stretched too wide into a grin that exposed broken teeth. The fog shifted as if she were breathing against the glass, and when her lips moved, I heard the whisper, "Let me in." I threw the knife at the mirror. It cracked but did not shatter, and when I looked again, the face was gone, just my reflection staring back, warped by the fractures. I slept in my car that night, or at least I tried. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in the rearview mirror, watching from the back seat. I drove aimlessly through empty streets until the sun rose, then dragged myself back to the apartment like a coward. The days that followed felt unreal. My co-workers' voices blurred, their faces melted into the background. My world shrank to two things, the apartment and her. Every night the same knock, every night the same words, every night the same face hovering closer, closer, as if waiting for the moment I would break and open the door. Then, one night, the knock did not come. 2:45 passed in silence. I sat frozen on the couch, staring at the door, half relieved and half terrified. The silence stretched on, until the relief curdled into dread. I crept to the peephole, my stomach turned to ice. Her face filled the glass, not outside, inside. Her eyes were inches from mine, staring directly back through the peephole, her mouth twitching as if trying to form a smile. My scream stuck in my throat as the air around me grew heavy, pressing against my chest. When I pulled back, the hall was empty. The apartment was silent, but I knew now she did not need the door. She did not need permission. She was already here. After the night I saw her face through the peephole from the inside, something in me cracked. It was no longer about whether I believed she was real. Belief had stopped mattering. She was here, and every choice I made now revolved around her. Eat fast, because she will start knocking soon. Leave the lights on, because she hates the light. Do not check the mirrors, because she uses them to smile at me. My life collapsed into a rhythm built around fear. I stopped going to work. I told my boss I was sick, then stopped answering her calls altogether. Groceries piled at the door because I was too afraid to step into the hallway long enough to collect them. My fridge was empty, so I ate dry cereal straight from the box and lukewarm tap water. I hardly noticed. All that mattered was the waiting. The strangest part was how ordinary the world outside continued to look. I would sometimes peek through the blinds at passing cars, at neighbors carrying bags of laundry or walking dogs, and it struck me how absurd it was. They went about their lives as though this thing had not claimed me, as though nothing monstrous had pressed its face against the glass inches from where I slept. The knocks did not stop, every night at the same time, always 3 raps, always deliberate, always meant for me. But now they came from everywhere. From the kitchen cabinets, from the walls behind the bed, from inside the closet. Each knock felt like a countdown, like she was reminding me how much longer I had before she got tired of waiting. The mirrors were the worst. I tried covering them again with blankets and towels, but every morning I woke to find them uncovered, spotless, like someone had smoothed them lovingly with a cloth. I could not avoid them anymore. Each time I walked past, I braced myself. My reflection lagged. Sometimes it smiled when I did not. Sometimes it pressed its hand against the glass a moment before I raised mine. Once, when I stumbled into the bathroom half asleep, I found the reflection standing perfectly still while I moved. Only when I leaned in close did it slowly, deliberately, tilt its head to match mine. I screamed until my throat burned and then slammed the mirror with my fist. The glass cracked but did not shatter, and in the fractured lines her face lingered for a second too long before disappearing. I thought about running again, packing up, leaving everything behind. But the memory of her at my niece's window, the muddy prints that followed me to my sister's house, kept me rooted. I could not outrun her. She had not tied herself to the apartment. She had tied herself to me. That realization settled like a stone in my chest. On the 5th night after the peephole, I set up a chair facing the front door. I was too tired to fight it anymore, too tired to pace or scream or throw knives at mirrors. I decided if she wanted me, she would have to come through the door herself. I sat there with the knife across my lap, my hands shaking from lack of sleep and too much fear. At 2:45, the knocking started. 3 raps, calm and steady, like always. I stayed in the chair, staring at the door. My mouth was dry. My body felt heavy, like my bones were filling with lead. The knock came again, louder this time. The chain rattled. The wood trembled. My throat worked to form words, but nothing came out. I just sat there, waiting. Then the whisper seeped through. "Let me in." I closed my eyes. For the first time since this started, I whispered back, "No." Silence. Then laughter, low and broken, spilling through the cracks in the door. Not a joyful laugh, but something twisted, like the sound of a voice that had been silent too long. It crawled into my ears and made me clamp my hands over them, but the sound was already inside me. The door went still. The laugh stopped. I looked up slowly, dreading what I would see. Through the peephole, nothing. No shadow, no figure. I stumbled to the bathroom, desperate to splash water on my face, to prove I was still awake and alive. The sink mirror was uncovered again, gleaming like it had been waiting for me. This time, she was not behind me. She was me. Her face stared out where mine should have been. Same pale skin, same black pits for eyes, same mouth stretched into that awful grin. My hands flew to my cheeks, but in the mirror they stayed still, resting calmly at my sides. Her mouth moved slowly, deliberately, and though no sound came from the glass, I heard her voice all around me. "Your turn." I smashed the mirror with the knife. Shards fell across the sink and floor, glittering in the harsh bathroom light. My reflection fractured into 100 pieces. For a moment, the pieces just showed me, broken and terrified. Then, one by one, each shard blinked, not in unison, individually, like a room full of eyes waking at once. I stumbled back, tripping over the doorway. The shards lay scattered, each one catching the light, each one holding her smile. I spent the rest of that night on the floor of the living room, shaking and waiting for the Sunday. When it finally came, I realized I had reached the end of what I could survive. The walls felt tighter every hour. The air itself seemed heavy with her presence. Every sound made me jump. Every silence made me sick. I could not live like this anymore. I decided the next night would be the last. Either I would face her, or I would leave forever and hope she stayed behind. That day, I cleaned the apartment like I was preparing for company. I threw out the trash, washed the dishes, folded the blankets. I left every mirror uncovered, every light burning. I wanted no excuses, no ways to hide. When the clock struck 2:45, I sat down in front of the door again, empty-handed this time. No knife, no salt, no childish tricks, just me and her. The knock came, 3 raps, slow and patient like always, and I whispered, "I am ready." The silence that followed was worse than the knock itself. I do not know if courage was the right word for what I felt that night. It was closer to exhaustion, to finally reaching the edge of what my mind and body could take. Fear had drained me, hollowed me out, left nothing but a thin shell. When the knock came 3 times at 2:45 in the morning, I was too tired to jump, too tired to hide. All I could do was sit there on the floor in front of the door, whispering to the air that I was ready. The silence that followed pressed against me like a weight. For a long time there was nothing, no voice, no scrape, no breath. I thought maybe she had given up, that my surrender had robbed her of whatever game she had been playing. I almost laughed, though it would have come out broken. Then the chain on the door rattled. The sound was soft at first, the delicate clink of metal links shifting. My stomach lurched as I realized the lock was moving, slowly, deliberately, without my hand touching it. I froze, staring at the handle as it twisted back and forth like a wrist stretching after years of stiffness. I whispered again, "I am ready." My voice cracked, but the words came. The door eased open an inch, just enough to let the cold air creep inside. My eyes went to the gap, waiting for her face to appear, for her long hair to slip through the crack. But nothing came. Instead, the knocking began again, not on the door this time, from inside the apartment, behind me. 3 raps against the living room wall, then 3 more from the ceiling, then 3 more from the kitchen cupboards. Every surface around me echoed with her rhythm, as though she was everywhere at once. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound sank in anyway, vibrating in my chest, in my teeth, in my skull. I turned toward the bathroom. The cracked mirror gleamed in the dim light. Shards still littered the sink, each one reflecting something that did not match my movements. Some fragments were empty. Others showed her smile, twitching wider, wider, until it split the corners of her mouth. I stumbled forward, knees buckling, and caught myself on the counter. I leaned over the broken glass, staring at 100 fragments of her face. They all whispered together, a chorus of the same words, layered and overlapping. "Let me in." I slammed my fist down, scattering the shards across the tiles. For a second, the reflections died, and all I saw was myself, ragged and shaking. That was when I understood. She had already been in, not through the door, not through the window, through me. Every whisper, every smile in the mirror, every face pressed against the peephole, she had been slowly taking the space I left empty with fear. Every hour I gave to terror, every night I spent waiting for her, I was carving out room for her to move closer. The only way to end it was to stop giving her that space, to stop letting her feed on me. I do not remember making the decision, but I heard myself saying it out loud. "No, you cannot come in." The apartment went still. The echoes stopped. The silence was so sharp it felt dangerous, like standing on the edge of a cliff. Then, for the first time, I saw her fully. She stood in the hallway, not behind the door, not behind the glass, but there in the open, hair long and matted, face pale and cracked like porcelain left in the dirt too long. Her eyes were pits that seemed to drink in the light, and her mouth stretched wide, too wide, until I could hear the skin tearing. I forced myself to stand, though my legs shook. I looked right at her. For once, I did not turn away. "You cannot come in," I said again. Her mouth twitched. The smile faltered. The air seemed to pulse, heavy with her presence. For a moment, I thought she might lunge, that she might finally close the distance and press her hands to my throat. But she only stood there, trembling, her head tilting farther and farther until her neck bent at an unnatural angle. Then she was gone. No scream, no fade, no shadow retreating, just gone, like someone had blown out a candle. The hallway was empty. The apartment was silent. I collapsed against the wall, sobbing so hard I barely noticed the blood on my knuckles from the shattered mirror. The weight pressing on me lifted slowly, like smoke thinning from a fire. For the first time in weeks, I felt the air move through the apartment like it belonged to me again. The next morning, the mirrors were just mirrors. No fog, no words, no lagging reflection. I left them uncovered, and nothing happened. That night, 2:45 came and went in silence. No knock, no whisper, no laughter. I packed a bag anyway. I could not keep living in that place, even if she was gone. The walls were too full of memory, the air too thick with what had already happened. I moved to a new apartment across town. A building with bright hallways, big windows, and neighbors who smiled when they passed. It has been weeks now. No knocking, no footprints, no whispers in the glass. The nights are quiet. I sleep, not perfectly, but enough to dream again. I keep the broken shard from that bathroom mirror wrapped in a towel at the back of a drawer. Some part of me thinks I should throw it away, let it go entirely, but another part of me needs the reminder. A reminder of how close she came, of how much space I almost gave her. When I look at the shard in the daylight, it only shows my reflection. Just me. No smile that does not belong. No whisper waiting on the other side. The rental was in a small town tucked away in the foothills, exactly what I needed after months of non-stop work in the city. It was mid-October, and I decided a quiet Airbnb retreat would be ideal for relaxing, catching up on some reading, and getting my head straight. After browsing listings for a few days, one stood out. A modest yet charming two-story house with plenty of positive reviews praising its cleanliness and coziness. The host, a woman named Karen, had glowing feedback from previous guests, mentioning her kindness and the warm atmosphere she provided. It seemed perfect. When I arrived in town, it was late afternoon. The streets were already quiet, and the air had that crisp autumn chill I always found comforting. The rental was located on a tree-lined street, surrounded by similar quaint homes. Leaves crunched beneath my feet as I approached the porch, carrying my duffel bag and laptop. Karen was waiting by the door, waving gently as I approached. She was probably in her early 50s, dressed neatly in a wool cardigan and jeans, with her gray-streaked hair pulled back into a loose bun. She greeted me with a warm smile that instantly put me at ease. "You must be Jake," she said, extending a hand. "Glad you made it. How was your drive?" "It was fine," I replied, shaking her hand politely. The countryside was beautiful, just what I needed. She nodded knowingly, leading me inside. The interior was clean and homey, filled with the scent of fresh-baked cookies and faint lavender. There was a fire going in the living room fireplace, casting a welcoming glow on the walls. Karen pointed out amenities, the kitchen, bathroom, bedroom upstairs, and showed me around briefly. "I live just across town," she said softly, handing me the keys. "If you need anything at all, just send a message." I usually stop by every other day to bring clean towels or check on things, but otherwise I'll leave you in peace. "Perfect," I replied, genuinely grateful. "Thanks, Karen." She smiled again, her expression lingering just a second longer than necessary. "I'm glad you chose this place. It feels right for you." The comment struck me as slightly odd, but I brushed it off, thanking her again as she waved and walked down the driveway, disappearing around the corner. I locked the door behind her, breathing a sigh of relief. The house was exactly as advertised, cozy, quiet, and private. It was the escape I'd hoped for. My first evening passed uneventfully. I cooked a quick pasta dinner in the small kitchen, then settled into an armchair by the fireplace with a novel I'd been meaning to read for months. Outside, dusk gave way to night, the wind softly rustling leaves against the window pane. It was peaceful, the kind of calm you rarely get in the city. After a couple of hours, my eyelids felt heavy, and I made my way upstairs to the bedroom. The mattress was comfortable, the bedding freshly laundered, smelling faintly of fabric softener. I drifted off to sleep quickly, content in the stillness of my new surroundings. The next morning, I woke early to bright sunlight streaming through sheer curtains. Stretching lazily, I padded into the bathroom to brush my teeth. I paused, toothbrush midair, noticing immediately that something felt off. My toothbrush wasn't in the exact spot I'd left it. It was slightly shifted, resting precariously on the edge of the sink instead of standing upright in the cup. A small thing, easily overlooked, but it bothered me. Shaking off the thought, I took a quick shower, but as I stepped out and reached for my towel, I froze again. It was damp, not soaking, just faintly moist, as though it had recently been used. I stared at it, frowning deeply. I hadn't used it yet. The logical explanation was that Karen had come in early to replace or move something, but she'd promised to always message beforehand. Feeling unsettled, I got dressed and walked downstairs, scanning the main floor. Everything looked untouched. The front door was locked, exactly as I'd left it, and there was no note or message from Karen anywhere. Deciding to give her the benefit of the doubt, I grabbed my phone and sent a polite text. "Hey Karen, quick question, did you happen to stop by this morning?" Within a minute she replied, "Hi Jake, no, not today. Is everything all right?" Unease tightened in my chest. I hesitated, then texted back, "All good, just checking, thanks." Throughout the day, I tried to shake off my lingering paranoia. I explored the small town, had lunch at a local diner, and chatted briefly with the friendly waitress about the town's history. When I mentioned where I was staying, her expression flickered for a brief moment before she smiled again, almost too brightly. "You'll love it there," she said. "Karen's place has a lot of personality." I wanted to ask what she meant, but she quickly moved on to another table before I could. That evening, back at the rental, I couldn't escape the nagging sense of discomfort. After dinner, I set up the small portable security camera I'd brought with me, placing it discreetly on the hallway table upstairs, pointing directly toward the bedroom door. It connected wirelessly to an app on my phone. It was probably overkill, I knew, but it made me feel safer. Exhausted from the day's anxiety, I climbed into bed, forcing myself to relax. Eventually, I drifted into an uneasy sleep, the night quiet and still around me. But at exactly 3:14 a.m., I jolted awake, heart pounding. The room felt oddly cold, shadows dancing across the walls. My phone lay silent on the nightstand beside me, screen dark. I reached for it, intending to check the camera feed, but noticed immediately a notification waiting silently on the lock screen. Security alert. Motion detected. Camera offline. As of 3:14 a.m. My blood ran cold. Quickly, I opened the app, hands trembling. The live feed was down, the camera showing only a blank error screen. Panic surged through me. Was someone else in the house? Cautiously, I rose from the bed, heart hammering against my ribs, listening intently. The house was eerily silent, except for the faint rustle of leaves outside the window. With shaking fingers, I tried to restart the camera feed, but nothing happened. It stayed dark. I stood there, paralyzed by indecision. Part of me wanted to flee the house immediately, drive away into the safety of town. But another, rational side insisted I was overreacting. Perhaps the Wi-Fi had glitched, or the battery died unexpectedly. Yet the memory of the damp towel, the moved toothbrush, and now this, it was all too much to dismiss as coincidence. Finally, with every ounce of courage I could muster, I approached the bedroom door, opening it slowly. The hallway was dark, empty, and silent. I stepped forward carefully, my breath shallow, listening for any sound, any indication I wasn't alone. But there was nothing, just shadows and silence and the cold, creeping feeling that someone or something had been right here, watching me sleep. I stood frozen in the dimly lit hallway, my pulse thrumming loudly in my ears. Every instinct told me I wasn't alone, that something had invaded the fragile privacy of this home while I slept. But the darkness revealed nothing, just silence, thick and oppressive, pressing down on me from every corner. "Hello?" I called out weakly, immediately regretting it as my voice echoed down the hallway. No reply came. Only the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs, a mechanical reassurance that offered little comfort now. I moved cautiously, each step deliberate and careful, toward the small table where I'd set up the camera. It sat exactly as I'd left it, positioned neatly, lens pointing directly toward my bedroom door, but the indicator light was off, completely dark. I picked it up, feeling a cold trickle of dread run down my spine when I saw it had been switched off at exactly 3:14 a.m. My hands shook as I opened the battery compartment, hoping desperately for a logical explanation. The batteries were still there, undisturbed and fresh. It had simply been turned off manually. A chill prickled my skin as I glanced around nervously, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows, but the hallway remained empty. Taking a shaky breath, I switched the camera back on. Its tiny green light flickered reassuringly, reconnecting quickly to the app on my phone. Immediately, notifications flooded my screen. Security alert. Motion detected at 3:13 a.m. Security alert. Camera offline at 3:14 a.m. A cold sweat broke out along my spine. Someone had been here, deliberately turning off my camera as soon as motion was detected. I played back the short video clip captured before the feed cut off, anxiety tightening my throat. The footage was grainy in the dim hallway light, but I clearly saw the edge of a shadow move quickly across the wall, disappearing just before the camera went black. My stomach twisted violently. Someone had stood outside my bedroom door, watched me sleep, turned off the only security measure I'd brought. Panic surged through me, overwhelming any rational thoughts I still clung to. I had to get out of this place right now. Still clutching my phone tightly, I rushed back into the bedroom and gathered my belongings in a hurry, stuffing clothes hastily into my duffel bag. Adrenaline made my hands clumsy, but within minutes, I was dressed and ready, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, car keys in hand. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I hesitated, glancing once toward the living room. The fireplace was cold now, the once inviting room dark and unwelcoming. I took one final look around the house that had felt so perfect just yesterday, then opened the front door. Outside, the chill night air hit me sharply, carrying the smell of damp leaves. I locked the front door firmly behind me, eager to leave whatever nightmare lingered here. Quickly, I made my way to my parked car, my footsteps crunching loudly in the silence. I tossed my bag into the passenger seat, climbed in hastily, and started the engine. Relief washed through me as the familiar rumble of my car filled the quiet street. But just as I was about to pull away, headlights appeared behind me. A second car parked directly across the driveway, blocking me in. My heart froze. The driver's door opened slowly and Karen stepped out, her face illuminated by the yellow glow of the street lamp. She looked concerned, confused, holding up one hand apologetically. I rolled down the window only a crack, my voice strained and cautious. "Karen, what are you doing here? It's late." She moved closer, looking genuinely puzzled. "Jake, I got worried. You seemed upset when you messaged earlier, and then I saw your lights on. Are you okay? Why are you leaving in the middle of the night?" My mouth went dry. Someone was inside the house, Karen. My camera caught it. The towels, my toothbrush, they've been moved around. I'm sorry, but I don't feel safe here. I have to go. Her eyes widened in surprise and distress. "Jake, that's impossible. No one else has keys. No one else was here. I swear to you." I shook my head firmly, not wanting to argue. "I appreciate your concern, but something isn't right. My camera detected someone in the hallway. I can't stay." She stepped closer still, leaning down slightly to speak through the gap in the window. "Jake, please, let's go back inside. We'll check together. I can prove nothing is wrong." "It's late. You're panicking. Let me help." Something about her tone set off alarms in my head, a sense that she was almost too insistent, too calm. I hesitated, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Just move your car, Karen. Please, I just want to go." For a long, tense moment, she stared at me, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, but if you change your mind, call me. I promise you, it's safe here." She stepped back, returning to her car. My pulse thundered as I watched her back out, clearing the way. I drove quickly away, hands still trembling, glancing repeatedly in my rearview mirror to make sure I wasn't being followed. After driving several miles, I pulled over into the brightly lit parking lot of a 24-hour gas station. My heart still hadn't settled, but at least I felt safer here, surrounded by fluorescent lights and the occasional passing car. I sat there, trying to calm myself, still gripping the steering wheel as though it anchored me to reality. To ease my nerves, I opened my phone again, deciding to double-check the Airbnb listing for anything suspicious. At first glance, everything appeared normal, mostly positive reviews praising the coziness and Karen's kindness. But when I filtered by date, starting with the oldest, my blood ran cold. There, buried deep beneath dozens of glowing reviews, were messages from past guests who'd clearly experienced unsettling events like mine. Host was friendly, but I woke up feeling like someone had been in my room, read one review from a year earlier. My towels were damp, even though I hadn't used them yet, said another. One review made my heart stop entirely. Woke up covered in bruises, no memory of getting them. Left immediately. Host denied everything. I stared in horror, the dread pooling deeper inside me. How had I missed this? The newer reviews drowned out these warnings, leaving them buried, hidden beneath layers of normalcy and praise. As I sat there, my phone suddenly buzzed. Another notification from my security app. A delayed video upload, marked clearly from 3:14 a.m. had just appeared. With trembling hands, I pressed play. The footage showed me sleeping, unaware and vulnerable. And then, slowly, silently, Karen emerged from underneath my bed, standing quietly beside me, her gaze fixed on my sleeping face. She leaned down, whispering words barely audible. "Don't leave yet. You were supposed to stay longer." The video stopped abruptly, leaving me alone in the bright, sterile parking lot, shivering uncontrollably, realizing I'd narrowly escaped something unimaginably dark. And suddenly, the cozy Airbnb felt very, very far away. I sat in my car long after the video ended, frozen, replaying it in my mind over and over. Karen, under my bed, the way she had stood so calmly, as if it wasn't the first time. The whisper, "Don't leave yet." My stomach turned. I checked the video's timestamp again. 3:14 a.m., exactly when the motion alert had gone off and the camera had shut down. She'd known where it was. She'd turned it off. My hands were trembling, but I opened the phone again and began typing a review. I wasn't going to let this slide. People needed to know. I needed to warn them, even if I couldn't fully explain what had just happened. I wrote the truth that something was wrong with that place, with her, that she'd been in the house at night without permission. I didn't care how insane it sounded. When I tried to submit the review, a notification popped up. "This host is currently under review. New submissions are temporarily disabled." My chest tightened. It was possible other people had already reported her. Or maybe she had some way of keeping those reviews buried, flagged as false or removed. I checked the earlier ones again, the ones I'd found buried deep before, and noticed something I'd missed earlier. Most had no responses from Karen. But one, posted months ago, had a single reply under it. "You weren't supposed to remember." My mouth went dry. It had to be her. She was replying to people she'd targeted, people who'd gotten too close to the truth. I needed to talk to someone. I wasn't sure if it was the police or the platform or someone else entirely, but I couldn't just drive home and pretend none of this happened. I had a video, I had proof. I just didn't know what to do with it yet. The nearest police station was only a few miles from the gas station. I drove there, still gripping the steering wheel too tightly. When I arrived, the place was nearly empty, quiet except for the hum of the lights and the soft voice of the night shift officer behind the desk. He looked up as I entered, his face impassive. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Yeah, I need to report something," I said, walking to the counter. "It's kind of weird, but I think I was being watched, or followed. I was staying at an Airbnb nearby, and someone, the host, came into the house, at night, while I was asleep." His expression didn't change. "Do you have proof of that?" "I do. I set up a small camera in the hallway. It caught her coming out from under the bed. I have the footage on my phone. It's real." "Let me see it," he said calmly. I handed him my phone. He watched the video, brows furrowing slightly, but never looking surprised, just quietly processing. When it ended, he looked up, his tone carefully neutral. "That is unsettling." "Yeah," I said, swallowing hard. "That's why I came here. I don't know what she's doing or why, but I wanted to make a report. In case someone else stays there and something worse happens." He nodded slowly, then turned to type something on his computer. "And you said her name was Karen? Karen Wilson?" I blinked. "Yeah. You know her?" He didn't answer right away. Then slowly, he stood and disappeared into a back room, telling me to sit tight while he looked into something. I waited. 5 minutes, then 10. The quiet of the station was unbearable, the flickering overhead lights buzzing faintly. My phone buzzed in my hand, an unknown number, no caller ID. I didn't answer. Then a text came through. "You shouldn't have shown anyone." My chest tightened. I looked toward the hallway where the officer had disappeared. Still no one. The door hadn't even creaked open. I stood up, walking cautiously to the counter, then leaned over slightly to peek through the hallway. Empty. I backed away and looked at the front door. For a split second I considered leaving, just walking out and calling a different station. But before I could move, the officer returned. He was holding a folder thick, aged, and he set it down gently on the counter. "She's been reported before," he said quietly. "A few times, all from out-of-towners. People passing through, staying a night or two. Claims just like yours." "What happened with them?" I asked, heart pounding. "Nothing," he said. "Reports vanish. No follow-up. Review sites get wiped. In one case, the guest himself disappeared, checked in, never checked out. His car was found 2 counties over, burned out." A cold chill ran through me, and she's still renting out the place. "She never owned it," he replied. "Property is in her brother's name. Long criminal record. He's never been seen in town, not in years. Everyone just deals with her. No one asks questions." My throat was dry. "So what do I do now?" He looked me dead in the eye. "You leave, tonight. You don't come back to this town. You don't write reviews. You don't post that video. You forget it happened. That's how you stay alive." I stared at him, stunned. "You're telling me to do nothing?" "I'm telling you this isn't the kind of place that listens. And she's not someone you want to challenge. People who do don't stay gone for long." I took a slow step back. "You know what she is, and you're still letting her do it." He didn't respond. I turned and walked out, my body buzzing with adrenaline and disbelief. The night air outside was ice cold, and I pulled my jacket tighter around me as I climbed back into my car. I drove straight through the night, my hands never relaxing on the steering wheel. Every time a car appeared behind me, I flinched, afraid it would be hers, afraid she'd somehow gotten ahead of me. It wasn't until sunrise broke over the highway that I finally exhaled. I still have the video. I keep it saved in 3 places: my phone, my cloud storage, a flash drive in a drawer I never open. I haven't shown it to anyone else, haven't shared it online, haven't tried to warn anyone again. But sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll get a message from a stranger. "Do you know anything about a woman named Karen?" And I don't respond, because she's still there, and she still has room for one. It's been a month since I left that town, since I pulled out of the gas station parking lot with my heart pounding, still reeling from what I'd seen. I've tried to settle back into my life, to find the rhythm I had before all of it: work, gym, errands, sleep. But it's not the same. Something changed that night. I changed. I still wake up at 3:14 a.m. without fail every night, not from nightmares. I don't remember dreaming at all. I just wake up, wide-eyed, breath held, listening, as if some part of me expects her to be there, watching from the shadows. I've done everything I can to forget it, deleted the Airbnb app, canceled the accounts I used for travel booking, removed every notification tied to that town, but some things won't stay buried. You don't just forget something like that. You don't unsee a woman crawling out from under your bed. The worst part? Sometimes I wonder if it really happened. I look at the video, I still have it, but it's grainy. The lighting is poor. The shape is vaguely human, sure, but I could almost convince myself it was just a trick of the shadows. The mind plays games when it's scared, but then I remember the whisper, that voice, the words. "Don't leave yet." I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And even now, that dread hasn't gone away. A few days ago, I got another message, anonymous, just like the others. The subject line was simple: Karen's place. No body text, no attachments, just the name. It came through my personal email, one I hadn't used for anything related to the trip. That's when I knew she wasn't done. I debated blocking the sender, deleting the message, pretending I hadn't seen it. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked reply and typed just one line. "What do you know?" No response came that day, or the next. But on the 3rd day, a new message appeared. Different address, but probably the same person. She's been doing this for years. Attached was a link to a zip file. I didn't open it right away. I ran antivirus software, scanned everything. Paranoia is second nature now, but eventually I clicked. Inside were screenshots, dozens of them. Old reviews, pulled from archived pages. Some were barely legible. Old browser screenshots with text warped and blurred, but the pattern was unmistakable. Woke up with scratches I didn't have before. Heard someone breathing in my room. My boyfriend thought I was imagining it. Only stayed one night. Something was wrong. My phone was moved, charger unplugged. I didn't tell anyone, but I've never felt safe again. Each review came from a different year, a different name. sometimes a different listing title altogether. Cozy getaway in Maple Ridge, secluded artist's loft, warm rustic stay, but always the same host. Karen. The photos showed different houses, slightly different furnishings, but there was always the same hallway, the same guest room, the same neatly made bed. I scrolled through more files, police reports, at least 3 names, guests who had filed complaints but later withdrew them. One case involved a missing persons report. The man had checked into a short-term rental, last seen picking up groceries the night he arrived. His car was found 2 weeks later, burned out on a logging road miles from town. No body was ever recovered. The case went cold. One file stood out, a blurry image from a home security camera. It showed a woman crouched low, partially obscured by a bed frame. The angle was just off, the lighting poor. But her hair, it was identical. The same gray-streaked bun, the same sweater I'd seen her wear when she greeted me on the porch. Karen. I clicked through the rest of the folder, my heart pounding harder with each file. The last document was a text transcript, just a single exchange. You still do this? They keep coming. They always need a place to rest. I slammed the laptop shut, heart hammering. It wasn't just paranoia. I hadn't imagined it. This was real. That same night I received another message. This one was short but clear. She knows you're watching. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I packed a small bag and drove across town to my brother's place. I didn't explain why, I just said I needed a break, time to clear my head. He offered the spare room without asking questions, and I've been staying here ever since. But even now, the feeling follows me. It's in the way I check the locks 3 times before bed, how I look under the bed, behind the curtains, even inside the closet. I don't feel safe anymore. Not anywhere. Then today, something new happened. I got a package. No return address. No markings. Just a plain brown box sitting on the porch, waiting for me when I came back from grabbing coffee. My stomach turned the moment I saw it. I took it inside, opened it slowly. Inside was a single object, a key. Attached to it was a note, written in handwriting I didn't recognize, but I didn't need to. Room for one. You left too soon. The key was old-fashioned, iron, the kind you'd see in a historic home, or a place that hadn't been updated in decades. And I knew, deep in my gut, it belonged to that house, her house. She was still reaching out, still watching. I stared at the key for a long time, then placed it back in the box, sealed it, and threw it in the dumpster behind the complex. But I knew that wasn't the end of it. Throwing it away didn't erase the message. It didn't undo what had already been done. Now every time I hear a floorboard creak, every time I wake at 3:14 and stare into the dark corners of the room, I wonder, is she here? Is she under the bed? Somewhere out there, Karen still has her listing. It might be under a different name, a different town, but the hallway will be the same, so will the room. And someone else will book it. Someone will think it's just another getaway, a cozy weekend escape. They'll settle into the bed, fall asleep thinking they're alone. And at 3:14 a.m. they'll wake to the sound of whispering. Don't leave yet. You were supposed to stay longer. I survived, but I don't know how many others will. It was supposed to be over. I had left, driven away, deleted the apps, blocked the number, burned the damn key after fishing it out of the trash because I couldn't sleep knowing it was still there. I even contacted Airbnb again from a different account, using a VPN, hoping I could bypass whatever filters Karen seemed to have wrapped around herself, but I never got a reply. I wasn't sure anyone on the other end even saw the message. I was trying to move on, back at my brother's house, still pretending everything was fine, that I just needed a break from the noise, and for a while, things quieted down. I was still rattled, still checking locks and peering into closets, but I thought the worst had passed. Until last Tuesday. It started with a voicemail. No caller ID, of course. The message was short, 7 seconds. Just the sound of breathing, slow, deliberate, close. Then faintly, almost too quiet to hear, the whisper I'd been trying to forget. Don't leave yet. I dropped my phone. For a second, I thought maybe it was my mind playing tricks again. I replayed the voicemail over and over, each time catching just a few more syllables. Stay longer. My brother found me sitting in the living room, pale and wide-eyed, gripping the phone like it might bite. You okay? He asked cautiously. I nodded, lied. Yeah, just got some bad news. But I knew it wasn't news. It was a warning. That night, I turned on every light in the house, every single one. I stayed in the guest room with a flashlight in one hand and a metal bat in the other. I didn't sleep. At 3:14 a.m., the lights flickered. Only for a second, maybe two, but they flickered. No power outage in the neighborhood, no bad weather, just my room, just my clock resetting. And when I checked the camera I'd mounted on the door, yes, I had another one, of course I did, it showed nothing. Nothing at all. Except it had been turned off at exactly 3:14 a.m. The same timestamp, always the same. I sat in the dark for hours after that, no longer trying to deny what I'd known deep down all along. This wasn't about a bad rental. It wasn't just a creepy host or a glitchy camera. This was deliberate, coordinated, targeted. Karen, if that was even her real name, hadn't just been watching me during that weekend. She was still watching, and I wasn't the first. So I started digging. Harder than before. I spent days scouring old travel forums, web archives, anything that hadn't been buried or erased. I searched names, addresses, descriptions of the property. I found fragments. Posts deleted hours after they were created. Blog entries that vanished mid-sentence. Even a Reddit thread that simply said, "Don't book the cottage near Maple Ridge," followed by nothing but blank space. I tracked down one username, a guy named Darren who'd posted in a hiking forum about his strange Airbnb experience in the same area. His account had gone inactive 2 years ago. I sent him a message anyway. He replied 2 days later, a single sentence. "You saw her too, didn't you?" I typed out everything, the towel, the toothbrush, the camera, the video, the key. He didn't respond for a full day. When he did, he asked for a phone call. I hesitated, then agreed. We spoke for 35 minutes. Darren's voice was low and hoarse, like someone who didn't talk to many people anymore. He lived in another state now, no social media, changed his name. His story mirrored mine almost exactly. One night stay, strange behavior, subtle intrusions. I left after the first night, he said, thought I was being paranoid, but she followed me. Followed you how? I asked. The same way she's following you now. Messages, packages, visitors. I nearly dropped the phone. She showed up at your house? No, he said flatly, but someone did. A man, clean cut. Said he was with the property management group. Asked a lot of questions. Wanted to know if I enjoyed my stay. What did you do? I moved. Never stayed anywhere without cameras again, but they always find a way back in. He said it like it wasn't just Karen, like there was a network, a group, people who were all part of it. Have you ever gone back? I asked. To the house? A pause. No, but I thought about it. I think that's what they want. What do you mean? They want you to go back. It's not about the house. It's about you. They pick people who won't be believed, people who are alone, travelers. They make you question your memory, your sanity. And then when you go looking for answers, that's when it gets worse. That night, I barely spoke to my brother. I told him I wasn't feeling well, that I needed some time to myself. I sat in the guest room with my phone on the desk, watching the camera feed, waiting, daring something to happen. At 3:14 a.m., the app glitched, just for a second. No motion alert this time, just static. And then, in the corner of the screen, a face. Not fully visible, just part of it, eyes staring. Close to the camera, so close I could see the reflection in one iris. It was me. The feed cut to black. I slammed the laptop shut, heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. For a moment I felt paralyzed, like the fear had sunk its claws into me completely. But I knew what I had to do. I packed a bag, left a note for my brother, and I drove. Not back to the house, not yet. To the town, to the diner where that waitress gave me that strange look, to the gas station where I'd first felt safe, to the police station where the officer had warned me, quietly, calmly, to disappear. And I realized something they all knew, maybe not all the details, but enough to stay quiet, to look away. Maybe because they were afraid, or maybe because they were part of it. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was going back. Not for revenge, not even for answers. Just to end it, one way or another. Because I couldn't live like this anymore. Because I knew wherever I went, at exactly 3:14 a.m., she would still be watching. And she would always whisper, "You were supposed to stay longer." I arrived back in Old Town Ridge just after noon. The sky was overcast, casting a gray hush over the sleepy town. The kind of day that felt half finished, like something important had been forgotten. The streets were mostly empty, a few cars here and there, a couple of people walking their dogs. No one looked up as I passed. No one recognized me, or maybe they did, and they just chose not to show it. The diner was still there. Same chipped paint on the windows, same dusty neon sign flickering on and off. I parked across the street and watched it for a minute before heading in. The same waitress was behind the counter. Her hair was different, but I knew it was her. I didn't expect her to recognize me. To her, I was probably just another guest from a long list of faces she'd served. But the second our eyes met, something passed between us. Not surprise, just acknowledgement. I sat at the counter. She brought me coffee without asking. "You came back," she said. "I had to." She didn't nod, didn't blink, just stared into her notepad like it had something important to say. "You're not the first," she added. I figured. She scribbled something, then tore the page out and slid it across the counter toward me. It was an address, not the one I remembered, but close, a few blocks off the edge of town. "They move it sometimes," she said quietly. "The furniture changes, the name on the mailbox, but the room stays the same." I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't ask why she was helping. I just took the paper, finished the coffee, and left a 20 on the counter. The new address brought me to the edge of a quiet residential street, lined with trees that had already shed most of their leaves. The house was smaller than before. White siding, one story, a porch swing creaking gently in the wind. No cars in the driveway, but the front door was unlocked. I stepped inside. The layout was different. New wallpaper, new furniture, but the hallway was the same. I walked slowly down the narrow corridor, passing the framed art, the coat hooks, the creaky floorboard just before the guest room. The door to the room was open. The bed was made. Neatly, perfectly. A single key sat on the nightstand, next to a folded note. I didn't touch either. I just stood there for a moment, taking it in. This was the place. Maybe not the same structure, but the place. And she was still here. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the camera app. It was already recording. I'd started filming back in the car. No more glitchy footage, no more shadows. Just me, here, walking through this house, with the truth. I turned slowly and walked back to the living room, where the fireplace flickered. There was no firewood, no switch. It burned anyway. I sat in the chair across from it, facing the hallway, waiting. 3:14 wasn't far off. As the clock on my phone ticked closer, the temperature in the room began to drop. Not dramatically, just enough to notice, enough to make the hair on my arms stand up. I checked the camera. Still running. And then, without warning, I heard the sound. The whisper of a door moving. Footsteps, soft, bare, coming from the hallway. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just raised the phone, steady hands capturing everything. She stepped into the room. Same sweater, same face, Karen. Her expression was calm, almost kind, as if we were old friends reuniting. "I knew you'd come back," she said. "I had to," I replied. She looked at the camera, then back at me. Her eyes were strange, too calm, too clear. There was no guilt, no fear, just acceptance. This place, it chooses people. Some don't even know why they book it. They just feel the pull. "What is it?" I asked. "Why me?" She smiled, faint and tired. It's not about you. Not really. It's about the story. Some people come and they forget. Some never leave. But you remembered. You saw it for what it was. I didn't speak. She walked to the fireplace and crouched beside it, running her hand through the flames. They didn't burn her, just flickered around her fingers. I don't make the rules, she said. I just keep the room ready. Ready for what? Her smile faded slightly. For the ones who need it, the ones who've been touched by it already. It doesn't let go. You carry it, whether you want to or not. My throat tightened. So what now? She stood, brushing her hands off like she'd just finished gardening. Now you leave. For good. You've seen what it is. That's enough. You walked into the fire and walked back out. And if I don't? Her eyes hardened. Then the room gets another guest. We stood there for a long moment. Then I nodded. I turned and walked back down the hallway, past the key, past the bed, out the door. The air outside was colder now, the wind sharper, but the sky was clearing. I drove straight to the county police department 2 towns over, told them everything, showed them the footage, gave them the address, names, dates. I don't know what they did with it. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. I went home. The messages stopped. The nightmares faded. And slowly I started living again. Weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened to it, the voice was one I didn't expect. The waitress. They shut the house down, she said. Came in with a warrant, took everything. She's gone, don't know where. But the house is sealed, cameras, lights. No one's booked it since. She paused. You ended it, you know, whatever it was. And then she hung up. That night, for the first time in months, I slept straight through. No wake-ups, no whispering, no shadow at the foot of my bed. Just silence. The good kind. I don't know what Karen really was. I don't know if she was part of something bigger or just a symptom of it. But I know this. Some houses don't want to be homes. Some places hold on to the people who pass through like a sickness that refuses to let go. But if you shine enough light into a room like that, sometimes it lets you go. Sometimes it sets you free. And if you're lucky, you never have to check under the bed again.